Marvel, I have Black Myth Wukong templates. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 126, The Clown. Lord Yang Jian is awesome. Let's put the 4 words Lord Yang Jian on the public screen. At this time, not only the audience watching the live broadcast, but all the survivors of Renton shouted. They were saved. Everyone looked at Yang Jian in the sky at this time, as if they were looking at a savior. He was surrounded by shining golden light, and his heavenly appearance was reflected in everyone's eyes. But just when everyone thought that the matter was over, a hoarse voice came out. You think you have defeated me, but in fact you don't know what my purpose is. Everything you do is just to help me. Malekith's voice became stronger and gradually spread to everyone's ears. The cheers that people had just heard stopped abruptly, and only Malekith's deterrent voice rang. All eyes were focused on Malekith, and the light around him was obviously dimmed, and the whole person was beaten to pieces by Yang Jian, but his eyes were extremely scarlet, emitting a very deterrent light. Malekith slowly stood up and flew into the sky. His deep voice came again. Maybe I'm not your opponent, but no matter how strong you are, how can you be stronger than a universe? When the whole world falls into darkness, even you are powerless to change it. No one understood what Malekith meant, but they found that the red mist around him had disappeared at some point, replaced by black winds, which actually surrounded the huge spaceship parked above Renton. The sky became bleak for a while, and even the light of the moon was completely blocked. At this time, those black winds turned into round suns and appeared above the sky, and there were not only 1, but 8 such black suns in the whole sky. What the hell is this? People shouted, looking at the sky in disbelief. Malekith looked at the scene in the sky at this time, but he showed a complicated smile. It was worth the price of his life. He finally succeeded. The 9 kingdoms can no longer escape. They are bound to be surrounded and destroyed by darkness. Malekith shouted loudly, and as his loud voice sounded, the black winds rushed into his body. Malekith felt that his body was like a deflated balloon, which was inflated in an instant, becoming extremely swollen and full of power. His voice also became deep and powerful, resounding in every corner of the world. Yang Jian, even you are not my opponent now. Any power I have is enough to completely annihilate you, so you just feel that you were born at the wrong time. Malekith's confidence is just like the abundant energy in his body at this time. Now he believes that he can completely defeat Yang Jian. He and Yang Jian have fought countless times, although he was beaten more unilaterally, or he was the only one who was beaten all the time. So Malekith also understands the power of Yang Jian's fist better than anyone else. However, Yang Jian's attack has no deterrent power for him who has increased his energy at this time. Malekith looked at Yang Jian proudly, his little eyes wandering on Yang Jian's face, trying to catch a trace of fear on Yang Jian's face. But there was no fear. Malekith couldn't help but feel a little flustered. He stared at Yang Jian's face blankly, and saw that Yang Jian's originally calm expression slightly revealed a smile. At the same time, a domineering reply came from Malekith's mind. As an ant, you still talk too much. Malekith couldn't believe it, and saw a golden light flashing between Yang Jian's eyebrows. Malekith's heart was constantly sinking at this time. He didn't understand why Yang Jian could still laugh when he already had such a powerful ability. In terms of their fight just now, although Yang Jian was far stronger than him, Malekith couldn't defeat him at this time. Such an obvious question. Doesn't Yang Jian know it himself? Yang Jian quickly told Malekith the answer. Malekith was surprised to feel that the energy field around Yang Jian was also rapidly becoming stronger at this time. This is an incredible speed of improvement. Yang Jian just stood there motionless, and Malekith could sense that the pressure around Yang Jian was getting stronger and stronger, even oppressing him a little breathless. Why is this happening? Malekith, who had exchanged his life for powerful strength, couldn't help but feel a little broken when he saw Yang Jian at this moment. Why did he pay such a huge price to get the power, while Yang Jian looked like it was effortless? However, all this was just the beginning. The bright golden light between Yang Jian's eyebrows was still flickering, overflowing with a dazzling and strong attitude. The golden light was getting brighter and brighter, that kind of holy and powerful light, which made people unable to look directly at it, but did not want to leave their sight. Not only that, Malekith also sensed that a huge energy was being nurtured in the golden light between Yang Jian's eyebrows. This power actually appeared from between the eyebrows. Question mark? Malekith had never seen such a strange sight. He didn't know what the powerful force between Yang Jian's eyebrows represented. He only knew that an instinctive fear was surging in his heart. The scene that appeared in front of Malekith the next moment shocked him directly. Between Yang Jian's eyebrows, the place with dazzling golden light actually opened an eye. That was Yang Jian's third eye. Facing this scene, Malekith was already dumbfounded, not knowing how to react. Even if he possessed the power of Ether and had absolute control over the real world, people who could possess such power were unprecedented in the entire universe. However, facing Yang Jian, who opened his third eye under his majestic golden light, Malekith felt that he was so insignificant. Could he be the ant that he had always despised? Question mark? Malekith didn't know that Yang Jian's third eye was the well-deserved Heaven's Eye. When the Heaven's Eye was born, no one could defeat it. Malekith didn't know that what he had seen before was just Yang Jian's melee combat, and Yang Jian only used a few % of his strength. And Yang Jian's most powerful thing is his various magical powers and spells. Just a few punches and kicks, just a cat teasing a mouse, playing with Malekith. In addition to Malekith, the whole world was shocked and petrified. The Supreme Commander looked at the screen in front of him with his mouth wide open. The power of this Chinese god named Yang Jian was so powerful that it seemed very pale in description. At this time, whether it was Malekith who had brought the entire red fog attack to Renton, or the huge spaceship that was still parked above Renton, they all seemed to be no threat and were forgotten by everyone. At this time, Malekith was just a clown who didn't know how high the sky was in front of Yang Jian in the eyes of everyone. Chapter 127 The Force of Thunder is coming. In people's eyes, the huge spaceship is just a small toy of aliens. In front of Yang Jian, all of this seems ridiculous and weak. With Lord Yang Jian here, Renton will be saved, the commander said firmly, and his eyes looking at the awe-inspiring figure on the screen were full of confidence. But Loki was not so confident. He stood there stiffly with a pale face, as if he was defeated. That Malekith was not Yang Jian's opponent. Then why did they go to so much trouble to find the other before? Question mark? Loki originally wanted to use Malekith's power and sent him away after he helped him clear all obstacles. But who would have known that Malekith, who even bet his life, was not Yang Jian's opponent at all? This reality made Loki's calculations fall into the air. He stood there at a loss, not knowing what to do for a while. At this time, Yang Jian and Malekith were still floating above the sky. Compared to Malekith's miserable state, Yang Jian looked even more majestic. His robes were blown by the wind, making a rustling sound. He was wrapped in a layer of strong golden light. Yang Jian looked like an arrogant god, looking down on everything coldly. In an instant, the light of the third eye between his eyebrows lit up again, and a series of scenes were projected from his forehead, all of which were golden statues, like ancient murals, showing up in front of people's eyes. For a moment, the gods and Buddhas in the sky returned to their positions. The incomparable light in the black sky attracted everyone's eyes, and the people of Renton looked up at the sky. At the same time, the atmosphere of confrontation became hot. Even if people don't know the identity of Malekith, they know that he is a powerful alien. Even if he has become a defeated general of Yang Jian, he looks like he still has some tricks. People can't help but worry, will the alien have any killer tricks like the red fog in the sky? Question mark? The whole city fell into infinite silence for a while. No one whispered, no one cheered, and for a while, it was like the leaves stopped shaking. People watched quietly, watching the two people fighting in the sky. The prelude to the fierce battle has been played, and the arrival of the storm will not be far away. Question mark? At this time, all people can do is wait and see. Lin Feng, who is in the center of the storm, is calm. He knows how powerful Yang Jian is. That is a divine power that is enough to shake the world. Even Yang Jian, whose ability has not been fully unlocked, has the ability to completely crush Malekith. What's more, he has the blessing of the third eye, which can better absorb the essence of heaven and earth. Fighting on earth is a home advantage for him. Lin Feng was full of strength at this time. A powerful force was clamoring in his body, as if he wanted to break through his body and draw between heaven and earth. Even if Yang Jian had not been fully unlocked, the power of heaven and earth and the power of the sun and the moon he used were not something Malekith could compete with. Malekith almost lost his balance under the impact of Yang Jian's huge aura. He tried his best to control himself and stabilize himself. Although he could barely maintain his calmness on his face, his heart was beating wildly because Malekith clearly felt the power of Yang Jian at this time. However, he had no way to retreat. Even if he was a powerful opponent, as a dark elf, Malekith had his own mission to complete. Even if he risked his life, he would let the dark dimension invade the 9 kingdoms. Therefore, even if Yang Jian was invincible, what Malekith could and must do was to delay time as much as he could. Malekith, who had made up his mind to die, suddenly felt that the world was clear. Since he was going to die anyway, he might as well have a good fight. It would not be a pity to die in Yang Jian's hands. Ha! Malekith roared, and a fierce red light burst out from his body. Several sharp light pillars surrounded him. Not only that, the black fog was also looming, entangled with the red pillars surrounding Malekith. The black and red fog and light began to rotate violently and turned into a giant dragon. The dragon's body was red and black. The farther the light and fog could reach, the more the dragon's body expanded. For a while, the sky was covered by the dragon's back. People could not see the sky, but only a hideous dragon roaring. The roar was endless. For a while, fear surged in people's hearts. Woo! The giant dragon was exactly what Malekith had transformed into. He howled in anger. This fierce howl, with wind and rain, instantly overturned the roofs of the tall buildings in Renton and scattered them everywhere. At this moment, Malekith mobilized the dark energy and attacked Yang Jian with all his strength. In an instant, there were bursts of thunder and bright light. However, Yang Jian, who was at the center of the storm and attack, stood there coldly, and there was no sign that he was being attacked by a strong man. Malekith saw that Yang Jian did not take him seriously, and he panicked, but the attack became more intense. His pupils, which had already transformed into a giant dragon, glowed red, and the dragon roared and revealed its bloody mouth. There seemed to be a flash of red in his mouth, and before anyone could see clearly, he sprayed towards Yang Jian. For a moment, the strange scarlet enveloped the entire earth, and Yang Jian's golden light seemed a little dim. People were shocked by such a strange scene, and couldn't help but scream. Everyone's heart was in a knot, and they couldn't help but sweat for Yang Jian's safety, and also worried about their own life and death. The giant dragon transformed by the alien was obviously crazy. How could Yang Jian defend himself against such a fierce attack? Question mark? After all, everyone had seen the power of the alien red fog. However, Yang Jian, who was in it, remained motionless. At this time, Malekith could no longer bear it. He was ignored by Yang Jian again and again, and such humiliation aroused his anger and unwillingness. The red candles around Malekith shone brightly, and in the dazzling light, people clearly heard its voice, that seemed a little distorted, because of its extreme anger. How dare you be so contemptuous of me? You must pay the price for your contempt. I, Malekith, am not someone you can see clearly. You will repent for all this, when your soul is scattered. The black and red dragon roared, and with its furious voice, sharp beams of light spit out from his body one after another. For a moment, the red light in the sky became more intense, and there were red pillars like sharp blades everywhere. The difference was that the red pillars were really huge, like spaceships, shuttling and blasting in the air at high speed. Damn. Just as the people on the ground looked at the sky worriedly, they found that countless red pillars actually gathered together at the speed of thunder and attacked Yang Jian. The speed of the red pillars was so fast that before people could blink, they saw that the dazzling light of the red pillars was close to Yang Jian. Chapter 128. This is the power of Yang Jian. It's over. Everyone thought to themselves. At this moment, time seemed to freeze, everything seemed to be played in slow motion, and the light of the red column was reflected on Yang Jian's solemn face. At that moment, people saw a flash of golden light in Yang Jian's eyes in disbelief. It was as if the ancient powerful god had unlocked the seal in an instant, and a powerful force was like spring thunder that was invisible but audible. Yang Jian's divine eyes flashed with a stern light, and ancient patterns could be seen faintly in the light. For a moment, the space was like water waves, and even ordinary people could feel the powerful energy flowing like ripples. The air became thick and heavy, pressing people to breathe. The light in Yang Jian's eyes was like a sharp blade, carrying the power that could penetrate everything, breaking through the clouds and mist. Boom. In an instant, the roar was deafening. The red light column surrounding Yang Jian shattered like glass, and the fragments of the red column closest to Yang Jian fell within a few inches of Yang Jian's toes. A light sneer escaped from Yang Jian's well-shaped thin lips. His voice was very magnetic, but the murderous intent in it was so undisguised that it made people feel terrified. People who had watched the live broadcast of the moon landing could not help but jump in their hearts. Has the great god Yang Jian finally been provoked by that ignorant alien? People's eyes fell on the fragments of the light column scattered on the ground in front of Yang Jian. Those fragments were still floating, flashing insignificant light, but there was no courage and strength to gather together again. This is the power of the god Yang Jian, which is overwhelming and insurmountable. But Malekith, who had already decided to die, was not afraid. Although he had an uncontrollable fear of Yang Jian's power, he didn't care about anything at this time. No matter how powerful Yang Jian was, what would it matter? No matter how powerful you are, you can't go against fate. The 9 kingdoms will eventually be occupied, and you are nothing but a lonely false god. Without the worship of humans, you are nothing. Malekith roared fiercely. The red light shone again, this time with an unprecedented brightness, as if it could penetrate everything in the world. Malekith was desperate this time, injecting overwhelming energy. His anger and determination were unstoppable. In an instant, there were only black and red in the world. This strong contrast and extremely depressing color made everyone's heart sink. The boundless black and red lights gathered together and actually surged towards Malekith again. The giant dragon was surging in the sky like clouds and mist, and its scales fell one by one, as if it could not bear the influx of powerful energy. But the light column became more and more intense, and people couldn't even look directly at the light. Even so, Yang Jian still stood aside calmly, as if he was enjoying a grand monkey show. Yang Jian's attitude made people feel inexplicably calm. They looked at Yang Jian's eyes, which did not shy away from the strong light, and were filled with awe. Is this the determination of the supreme god? The calmness that was unmoved was unforgettable. The next moment, everyone heard Yang Jian's low voice. I'm really disappointed. I wasted so much time, and I saw nothing but this. Yang Jian said the extremely insulting words in a flat tone, as if he was evaluating a bad weather. These words seemed light, but in fact they fell on everyone's hearts like a heavy hammer. Does Yang Jian have a backup plan? Question mark? Even though the alien was shouting so loudly, there was still no retreat from the Lord Yang Jian, which shows how deep Yang Jian's power is. So, is he not going to play with this alien anymore? Just when everyone was doubting, a loud noise exploded in everyone's ears. The golden light was surging, swallowing up the black and red light of Malekith with an overwhelming momentum, and the huge black and red light column suddenly became weak. At this time, the black and red light could no longer be described as a beam of light, but rather as a series of tiny beams of light, and all of them were surrounded by Yang Jian's golden light. Suddenly, there was a bang in my ear, and the black and red beams of light exploded like fireworks. For a moment, the sky was full of black and red sparks, but they looked as vulnerable as coal against the background of the golden light that could cover the entire sky. The debris fell down, and it seemed like black rain was falling from the sky, densely packed, rushing towards the ground. Above the black rain, the golden light enveloped the entire sky, demonstrating its dominance over the sky. This is the power of Yang Jian. How could this happen? Malekith shouted in collapse. He simply couldn't bear to look at the scene in front of him. The strongest blow that he was proud of was turned into debris by Yang Jian's light in an instant. Looking at the dark slag on the ground, Malekith fully realized how powerful Yang Jian was. That was definitely not something he could match. And just as he was thinking, Yang Jian had already driven the golden light to once again wipe out the remaining black and red beams in the sky. The sound of explosions continued. Not only were the black and red beams of Malekith shattered, but also the giant dragon form he transformed into. The black and red dragon began to break from the tail, and the cracks became larger and larger, directly spreading to the entire back of the black dragon. Seeing that if this continued, Malekith would soon be completely shattered by Yang Jian, he roared angrily, and rushed towards Yang Jian, who was wrapped in golden light, with all his strength. A huge whistling sound came, and Malekith's desperate rush brought up gusts of wind. He had already made up his mind to die, but was now forced into a desperate situation, and the power he exploded was even more violent than before. This was the last rush. Malekith opened his bloody mouth, roared from the depths of his abdomen, and rushed towards the golden light with all his strength. There was only a bang. The golden light was like an extremely hard wall. The dragon's body did not penetrate the golden light, but hit it heavily. Then the dragon's body was violently bounced and fell backwards. The huge crash sound mixed with the dragon's screams of pain rushed into people's eardrums. Everyone looked at the scene in the sky in disbelief. They all saw how the dragon rushed towards the golden light that wrapped Yang Jian with such power. However, the seemingly shapeless golden light was like a copper wall and iron wall. The dragon not only did not penetrate it, but was severely injured. What kind of power is this? Before people came out of shock, they found that the body of the dragon falling in the sky had begun to disintegrate rapidly. Don't think this can hurt me. A voice sounded, which was like the voice of the alien before. People looked at the source of the sound, and found a figure flashing behind the golden light. It's the golden cicada escaping from its shell. The people watching on the ground couldn't help but say, it turned out that Malekith separated himself from his original body at the moment he crashed into the wall of light. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 129. You still dare to shout at this point? It seems that he is not too stupid. Someone joked. But everyone knew that no matter how smart he was just a clown struggling in front of Yang Jian's overwhelming power. Malekith was still yelling over there. I won't let you go. At this time, Malekith had become a little crazy under Yang Jian's continuous attacks. Facing the irrational Malekith, Yang Jian had no interest at all. He said coldly, you still dare to shout at this point? At this time, the huge dragon body was still slowly falling down and disintegrating in the sky, but no one's eyes were still focused on it. Everyone was concentrating on watching Yang Jian and Malekith confronting each other in the sky. Many people actually hoped that Malekith would not give up and hoped that he would use any tricks he had. After all, the more means he used, the more Yang Jian would fight back, and they would be able to feast their eyes. At this time, the tension in people's hearts was getting weaker and weaker. Beside Yang Jian, who represented absolute safety, people's hearts were filled with curiosity and expectation in addition to firm belief. Malekith did live up to everyone's expectations. The red light enveloped his whole body again, and Malekith, surrounded by the light, slowly raised his fist. People felt a strange breath surrounding Malekith, like a brand new power, and this feeling was different from any previous time. Extraordinary power was flowing through Malekith's body, and this power was all gathered in his arms. This time he was going to give it a try. Malekith roared and punched Yang Jian. This punch seemed to condense the power of the stars in the universe. As he punched out, the whole sky seemed to be flashing with lightning. A huge thunder sounded, and wherever Malekith's punch, carrying the power of the universe, seemed to distort the whole sky. This is also possible? Is that alien crazy? Oh no, I'm a little worried about Lord Yang Jian. Oh my god, is this a fight between gods? Everyone exclaimed. But their constant chatter could not catch up with the speed of Malekith's punches. Malekith's fists were like a meteor shower passing through the sky, with a constant rumble. Malekith's punches were in place and all fell on the wall made of golden light. The golden barrier did not move at all, and with Malekith's attack, lines appeared faintly. The lines were connected, vaguely like a formation. Seeing this, Malekith continued to exert his strength, and threw a heavy punch, heavily hitting the golden barrier in front of him. There was a rumble, and the sky was full of red light, but the barrier made of golden light remained motionless. Oh my god. Is this the power of Lord Yang Jian? Question mark. It turns out that the gods don't need to take action themselves to block all attacks. Is this what you call magic and magical power? Many people admired in their hearts. At this time, Loki, who had been observing silently beside him, had also been paying attention to the movements here. He saw all the efforts of Malekith. However, Malekith had done this, but he couldn't even break the barrier. He risked his life, but he was not shaken in front of the Lord Yang Jian. This Yang Jian is really too powerful. Malekith was still fighting hard, but the golden barrier not only did not move under his fist, but also had the effect of dissolving his body. Malekith could feel that his vitality was decreasing with every punch he threw. This was not only because the power at this time was obtained by overdrawing his life, but also because this golden barrier itself was a magical power of defense as offense. What should I do? For the first time, Malekith felt a deep fear coming from the bottom of his heart. That is, he was powerless in front of Yang Jian. Is that all? Yang Jian's contemptuous words came through the golden light. His seemingly casual words were full of condescending attitude. And he did have the capital and ability to do so. People knew very well how powerful Malekith was, but in front of Yang Jian, he was like a 3-year-old child resisting an adult. Yang Jian was stronger than anyone could imagine. Even though they had seen Yang Jian's power on the live broadcast of the moon landing, seeing it with their own eyes at this time still stunned everyone. Every attack of the alien carried the power of the galaxy and the universe, and such a combo was not as good as a kitten scratch in front of Yang Jian. Especially the infinite changes of the golden light, which could actually turn into a solid barrier and bounce off the giant dragon that rushed towards the barrier. What kind of power is this? Question mark. Because Yang Jian was so powerful that it was beyond people's imagination, people couldn't help but question Malekith's strength. Is this guy just a fake? When watching the live broadcast of the moon landing, I was looking forward to Lord Yang Jian coming to the world. But when Lord Yang Jian really came to the world, why do I feel that I'm a little unworthy and the earth can't bear it? I think that alien is not strong enough. I guess Lord Yang Jian only used less than 30% of his power on him. For a while, everyone had different opinions, and the only consensus was the infinite admiration for Lord Yang Jian. At this time, Malekith, as an eyewitness, knew how powerful Yang Jian was better than anyone else. He tried his best to attack Yang Jian with the power of ether and reality gems, but all this had no lethality to him. What kind of fighting power is this? Question mark. Malekith was panicked and shocked. He couldn't believe that there was such a powerful person in this world. Could it be because of his eyes? Could it be that the weird and magical eye in the sky is Yang Jian's secret weapon? Malekith suspected that his guess was correct, but his common sense made him unable to believe that an eye could actually burst out such a huge power. At this moment, Yang Jian's voice came again. I have waited long enough. It is also your honor to use you to kill time, but all this ends here. Yang Jian's voice sank, and Malekith seemed to feel a sharp knife stabbing at himself. His heart was beating wildly at this time. Even if he had already made up his mind to die, Yang Jian was not an opponent he could defeat after all. Not to mention that when the end came, he found that he was not as brave as he thought. Don't worry, I will fight quickly and decisively. After a while, Yang Jian threw another sentence lightly, which seemed to be the last straw that broke the camel's back, making Malekith's heart break. No. In an instant, Malekith threw away all his dignity and cried for mercy from Lord Yang Jian. However, Yang Jian, like him, did not like to listen to the monologue of ants. He took a step forward and just moved his fist slightly. A huge roar was heard. A shockwave penetrated the golden light curtain, and Yang Jian's fist rushed directly to Malekith's body. The sky trembled, and the black and red mist that originally filled the air was broken by the golden light. For a moment, the golden light filled the sky, and the starry sky that was originally covered by the black and red mist was revealed again. Chapter 130 Colorful stream of light, unparalleled in the world. Everyone was dumbfounded watching this scene. Yang Jian only moved his fist slightly to cause such a great attack. Oh my god, this is... Lord Yang Jian is too strong. as expected of an ancient god. People's exclamations came one after another, and they couldn't take their eyes off the sky. They saw that Yang Jian's punch actually left a deep mark in the sky, like a track, showing the infinite power he just used. The crowd cheered again, and someone shouted, "Look! That alien!" People's eyes all looked at Malekith. They couldn't believe that Malekith, who was standing in the sky at this time, had lost half of his body out of thin air. The other half of his body was actually broken apart by Yang Jian. Malekith was like an abandoned puppet at this time. His head was precariously connected to his body, but his neck was like a string, as if he couldn't support the weight of his head in the next second. His entire chest was completely shattered, and one of his arms and shoulders was completely shattered into pieces. The pain in Malekith's body had made him numb, and he was filled with deep despair. The punch Yang Jian had just thrown at him had already foreshadowed his end. How can he be so strong? Just one punch, but the power was so great that it could shake the world. If Malekith hadn't had the help of the reality stone, he would have been dead long ago, and even his soul wouldn't be found. However, even if he was still alive, he didn't know how he could fight against Yang Jian. Every time he thought about it, the fear in Malekith's heart intensified. Yang Jian's strength was really an unsolvable problem. Malekith was forced into a desperate situation by Yang Jian's powerful strength. Even though he was no longer afraid of life and death, Yang Jian's strength really made him tremble in his heart. What should I do? What should I do? What should I do? Malekith used the power of the reality gem again. Although he was at a loss at the moment, at least the only thing he could do now was to restore his body to its original state. The red light emerged from Malekith again, but this time it was not so easy. A mouthful of blood spurted out of his mouth. His mental power was so badly damaged that, even if he wanted to push the reality gem to repair his body, it would only cause irreversible damage to him again. Just when Malekith was at a loss, he saw Yang Jian looking at him coldly and walking towards him step by step. The golden light shone like a sharp sword in Yang Jian's eyes. Your ability is interesting, but being able to repair yourself is just to endure the pain of being attacked by my fists repeatedly. Yang Jian was speaking, and the silver armor around him slowly turned golden with the flow of golden light. The golden armor reflected the sky, and the dazzling brilliance made Yang Jian have an inviolable majesty. At this time, Yang Jian swung another punch to attack. This punch was far more powerful than the previous one. Just the previous one had broken half of Malekith's body, and he still couldn't recover. If he was hit by this punch again, Malekith's heart was about to break. He struggled to dodge, but found that Yang Jian's punch seemed to have locked his body, and he couldn't move at all. No, Malekith screamed in fear. Is he going to die here? Question mark? However, the fierce punch turned into a stream of light. The colorful light turned into divine patterns in the air and spread to the entire sky. Malekith, who was extremely surprised, couldn't dodge and could only bear it. Boom. Malekith's eyes were full of dazzling colorful light. He had given up struggling. At this time, he couldn't struggle. He could only stare at the light approaching. At this time, Malekith's body and mind seemed to have been transcended, blank and spotless. Even his wish for revenge for many years seemed to be forgotten. However, the power brought by these seemingly beautiful streams of light is not weak at all. Yang Jian's fist seemed to be divided into countless phantoms, each of which was a sharp attack. Under such a strong attack, cracks appeared in the sky, and the space around Malekith was distorted, and all the fierce attacks were concentrated and attacked Malekith. Loki, who was standing aside, saw this scene with fear, and closed his eyes in despair, only to hear the huge roar again. The powerful punch made Malekith completely lose the ability to resist. The people who had been waiting for the result looked up at the sky expectantly. The dazzling stream of light filled the entire sky. If people hadn't seen it with their own eyes, no one would believe that this was the light caused by Yang Jian's punch. People clearly knew that under Yang Jian's attack, Malekith had no chance of standing up again. This is the invincibility of the ancient gods. You can shatter the sky with 1 foot and break through the clouds. At this moment, Malekith's body seemed to be covered by eternal ice, and the extreme cold filled his body. He wanted to move, but he couldn't even lift his little finger. He felt that his nasal cavity was extremely narrow, and every wisp of air was very important to him. At this moment, Malekith seemed to be trapped in a fruit shell, unable to move, and had difficulty breathing. All he could see was Yang Jian's dazzling fist. In an instant, all of Malekith's spirit was shattered by Yang Jian, and all that was left in his heart was deep fear and admiration for Yang Jian. No, no. At this moment, Malekith seemed to suddenly remember something. His eyes flashed, and his eyes became firm again. A desperate roar came from Malekith's throat. Yang Jian, what's the use of you being so powerful? No one can stop the invasion of the dark dimension. Just when you bullied me with your ridiculous fist, the invasion of the dark dimension never stopped. No matter how powerful you are, you can't compete with the whole world. Malekith felt that he had reached a desperate situation. He only wanted to die at this time, but as long as he could complete the mission of the Dark Elves before that, he would not have lived in vain. At this time, Malekith, who was full of mission, showed a solemn and awe-inspiring expression on his face. After enduring endless darkness for a long time, what he was thinking about was nothing more than the overlap of the 9 kingdoms this time. Seizing this opportunity to drag the 9 kingdoms into the dark dimension is his lifelong wish. However, even though Malekith's will was so strong, Yang Jian's fist did not hesitate at all. His fist shattered layers of space and finally came in front of Malekith. It was impossible to retract it. Yang Jian's fist was unstoppable. A huge light shone on Malekith's face, and his vision was clear. In an instant, Malekith forgot all words, and in his heart there was only the boundless sense of oppression brought to him by Yang Jian's fist. Malekith's body couldn't help but tremble. Even if he claimed to be a high-level civilization, would he tremble with fear like an ordinary person when he was on the verge of death? And his expression stayed at this moment. Chapter 131. Is it Yang Jian? Question mark? Yang Jian's fist rushed straight to Malekith's chest. His arm seemed to have no obstacles, as gentle as passing through water waves, but people could clearly hear the sound of Malekith's bones breaking. In an instant, a hole was pierced through Malekith's body by Yang Jian. The size of the hole was just the size of Yang Jian's fist, which was amazing. Even the alien who could restore his body countless times and seemed to be immortal knew that he should be really dead this time. People followed Yang Jian's eyes and watched his body with golden armor go around behind the alien. As if doing the final treatment, the alien's already tattered body suddenly exploded, and black and red blood splashed out of his body. For a moment, it seemed like raining. That alien has been destroyed by the great god Yang Jian, right? Oh my god, what kind of power is this? As expected of Lord Yang Jian. And he is the ancient god of China, and if China persuades Lord Yang Jian to deal with us, then people were discussing it. People who were originally looking forward to Yang Jian killing this powerful alien had complicated thoughts when they saw the tragic state of the alien. Yang Jian's strength is rare in the world. This kind of power is not only admirable, but also terrifying. At the same time, Loki, who has been watching from the sidelines, also had complicated feelings. Seeing his partner die in front of him, even if he used his relationship, Loki couldn't help feeling sad. Yang Jian's strength made him fear from the bottom of his heart. Malekith was already very strong, and he was strong under the blessing of ether energy. What's more, Malekith also bet his life in exchange for the use of the reality gem. His mastery of reality has reached perfection. He was already so powerful, but he was still so vulnerable in front of Lord Yang Jian. What kind of fighting power did Yang Jian have? Question mark. Did all the lords of the ancient times have the same level of power as him? Question mark. Loki's mind was trembling at this time. He didn't even dare to think about what kind of power it would be. It must be terrifying far beyond his cognition. For a moment, Loki's mind was filled with shock and fear, so that he forgot to leave this dangerous place as soon as possible. Because he was in a huge dark elf spaceship. But at this time, Loki had completely forgotten his situation and how much of an eyesore the huge spaceship he was in front of Yang Jian. Just when Loki was frightened and numb by his fear, a roar came. His feet were shaking, and the wall was shaking violently. The sudden change made Loki unable to react for a while. What is going on? Loki suddenly woke up from his meditation and couldn't tell the difference between reality and imagination. But the fear brought by Yang Jian had been deeply implanted in his heart. Yang Jian, is Yang Jian coming? Then, a piercing alarm sounded. Impact coming warning. 200 kilometers. 100 kilometers. At this time, the Dark Elf spaceship had fallen into a panic. The death of Malekith left everyone leaderless, and the piercing alarm sounded, exacerbating the tense atmosphere at this time. No one knew how to deal with this sudden impact, not to mention that this impact was so strong. There are still 20 kilometers left. 10 kilometers. The impact will arrive in 3 seconds. 3, 2. The impact is coming. For a moment, the sky was gloomy, and the strong wind swept the broken rubble and roared through the entire city that had become a ruin. And the center of the storm that caused all this was rushing towards them. Loki's arm kept flashing a blue light of warning. He was in the command room, and the huge screen presented the dangerous scene vividly in front of him. He must escape from here immediately. But it was too late. At this time, the entire city of Renton was caught in a huge storm. The already shaky high-rise buildings were blown away by the strong wind, and the sand and gravel made the entire city unclear. A strong force rushed straight to the Dark Elf's spaceship. No one could stop that force. It was like a force that split the mountains and the sea, with infinite power. The next second, a huge roar sounded, and the spaceship tilted violently. Loki's feet were unstable and he staggered. It was that powerful force that hit the spaceship violently. Does this kind of power really exist? Loki couldn't believe the huge impact he was receiving at this time. The light on his hand was originally shining, but it was completely extinguished at the moment of the collision. If the spaceship had not had a certain stability, otherwise at that moment just now, the spaceship would have been reduced to fragments like Malekith. The whole city of Renton was shaking because of this huge impact. It seemed that it was due to the invasion of the dark dimension. At this time, the black matter covered the entire earth, so when the impact came, it played a certain buffering role. Otherwise, the whole city of Renton would have suffered a lot. For a moment, the tremor made people feel a little tinnitus, smoke, and dust filled the air, and there was a desolate scene everywhere. The commander-in-chief in the command room looked at the miserable situation of Renton on the screen with a pale face. He thought that the arrival of Lord Yang Jian would rescue them. He finally waited for the alien to be solved by Lord Yang Jian, but he didn't expect that a greater disaster was waiting for them. What is going on? What happened? The commander trembled as he looked at the scene of Renton on the huge screen. At this time, the whole of Renton had almost become a ruin. As far as he could see, there was no vitality, only endless wasteland and burn marks. All this came so suddenly that the commander still felt like he was dreaming. Is this the dark invasion that the alien has been shouting about? The commander-in-chief looked at the screen in confusion. He didn't understand the meaning of Malekith's words, but the picture in front of him made him clearly understand that the damage caused by the alien invasion was devastating. At the same time, a ray of light broke through the air from the distant sky. The commander-in-chief looked over there. Oh my god, that direction. The commander-in-chief immediately reflected what that direction was. What's more, the huge mushroom cloud blooming in the sky also made him extremely sure that is where they store nuclear weapons. At this time, the commander-in-chief's eyes were bleak as never before. He looked at the mushroom cloud on the other side of the screen hopelessly, with only one thought in his mind. This time Britain is completely finished. His eyes were fixed on the screen, and the light from the sky also illuminated his eyes through the screen. Suddenly, the commander-in-chief felt that something was wrong. The world in front of him. No, where are all those continuous mountains? How can the whole mountain disappear out of thin air? Chapter 132 No Way to Escape. The commander-in-chief blinked several times and found that there was indeed no mountain on the screen. How is this possible? What is going on? The commander's mind was very confused at this time, but as if he saw a beam of light in the fog, the commander questioned. If it is really the so-called dark dimension invasion, why doesn't anything happen here? The commander-in-chief looked at the screen more carefully. Under the light, a tall figure stood proudly between heaven and earth. The divine patterns on his body flowed, and the colorful light surrounded him. He was a unique god of war in heaven and earth. Seeing this familiar figure, the commander-in-chief finally knew why all this happened. It was the Lord of Gods Yang Jian. All this happened just because of the residual power of his punch. The commander-in-chief still couldn't believe that just one punch could knock down an entire mountain. Could it be that the power possessed by the ancient gods of China is stronger than their nuclear weapons? Then the whole world only needs to worship the ancient Chinese wilderness and study the ancient ruins. What's the point of investing so much in nuclear bombs? The commander felt that his worldview collapsed in an instant, and a feeling of nothingness filled his body. He was in a very complicated mood, with all kinds of tastes in it. The commander-in-chief didn't know how to face Yang Jian's combat power that could destroy the mountains and flatten Renton with one punch. At this time, Vincent, a senior professor at the command center, stumbled over. Professor Vincent was pushing an equipment cart in his hand. He looked at the commander-in-chief very seriously and said, "Please give orders immediately. Now there is an unknown substance that is encroaching on our universe, and that substance is right above our heads. If we are not careful, the entire Earth will lead to another dimension, and it is very likely to be fused and encroached." Professor Vincent said anxiously, and the commander-in-chief was confused, but he could feel the urgency of the situation. The commander-in-chief said hurriedly, "Wait a minute, what do you mean by another dimension? What do you mean by annexation and merger? Can you express it in simple and straightforward language?" The commander-in-chief's straightforward words stunned Professor Vincent for a moment. He stopped his excited expression, pushed his glasses to flee with his fingers, and then slowly spoke. "In short, our Earth will soon suffer the same damage as Renton." "What did you say?" The commander-in-chief felt his temples trembling when he heard Professor Vincent's words. "The same as Renton." The commander-in-chief looked at Renton on the screen, which had already become a ruin. This fact, which had already made him very upset, could make him even more desperate. Although he was very upset that Renton had become like this, as long as the Earth was still there, they could always continue to live and rebuild their homes with the help of other countries, not to mention that he also had several properties in other countries. But Professor Vincent's words. The commander-in-chief looked at Professor Vincent tremblingly and said, "If the whole world becomes like Renton, wouldn't it be the end of the world?" At this time, the Dark Elf spaceship that was dominating the sky had fallen to the ground. The entire spaceship was broken into two parts, and the two parts of the hull were severely damaged, completely turning into a pile of scrap metal. Loki was lying in the center of the broken spaceship, and was full of excitement that he was not dead. Most of the Dark Elf soldiers on the spaceship rushed to accompany Malekith, and he, Loki, was lucky enough to keep his life. With the joy of surviving the disaster, he pushed the metal pressing on him away with all his strength. The metal made a harsh squeak as it scraped across the ground. Loki stood up from the ground with an effort. At this time, he was in a mess, and his whole body was sensitive after a heavy blow. He looked around cautiously, fearing that another violent attack would burst out at any moment. Loki held the cosmic cube tightly in his hand. The cosmic cube glowed slightly. Looking at the power he had at this time, Loki felt a little more at ease. That's right, as long as the cosmic cube is still there, he can use the cosmic cube to escape immediately and leave this terrifying planet. Just when Loki was about to move, he suddenly stopped. The space door that opened was tightly closed in an instant. Loki looked out through the broken marks on the spaceship. Loki's face was pale and he whispered, "Oh no." He forgot the most important thing. It was all Malekith's fault. Now that the invasion of the dark dimension has begun, where can he escape? Everything in this world will be absorbed into the deep darkness. No one can reverse the invasion of the dark dimension. Does he have any other way out, except to be turned into a dark creature? Loki never regretted anything, but at this moment he finally realized what it meant to regret it so much. His face twitched, and the corners of his mouth seemed to be raised, but before he could put on an ugly smile, the corners of his mouth trembled and turned down, revealing an expression that looked like he was about to cry. He collapsed on the metal steel plate that he had just pushed open with all his strength. At this time, Loki had no desire to survive. All he had in his heart was overwhelming regret. If he had known that things would turn out like this, perhaps he would not have cooperated with Malekith in the first place. At least he could see his mother again. At this time, Loki's expression was more decadent and frustrated than he had ever been before. When he thought of the situation in front of him, he realized that it was most likely caused by himself. He was reaping what he had sown, but the 9 kingdoms were all going to be swallowed up by the dark dimension. When he thought of this, How could he have the face to return to Asgard, let alone see his mother? Loki sat on the cold metal plate, looking at his lonely reflection inside. At this time, the astronauts were still in orbit around the moon. Tony Stark and Bruce Banner were in the spacecraft. They excitedly recalled every scene of seeing Lord Yang Jian, and everyone felt that the trip was worthwhile. At this time, the signal from the ground called them. Emergency notice, emergency notice. The gamma ray values on the surface of the Earth are abnormal now. The data has been uploaded to you. Please help deal with it on the spacecraft. The current situation is very critical. If the Earth falls, you should not land on the Earth. Please seek other ways in the universe. Now you 4 astronauts have a heavy responsibility. Please be sure to protect yourselves. This sudden emergency notice was from Chen Haitian. Chen Haitian, who has always been steady, would actually be so anxious at times, and his words showed the urgency of the current situation word by word. The 4 astronauts exchanged panicked glances with each other, and a low and solemn atmosphere filled the space capsule for a while. No one spoke, only the sound of operating the screen. A light curtain was immediately unfolded in front of them, and in the light curtain was a city distribution map of the Earth. On this virtual map, there was an area covered with scarlet marks. Tony Stark couldn't help but blurt out, "This is Renton." Chapter 133. The countdown begins. Since the last experience in Hong Kong, Tony Stark has paid special attention to analyzing the same situation. He almost immediately determined that the red mark in Renton was related to the anomaly of time and space. However, the data and the scope of spread this time were even more serious than the wormhole that opened over Hong Kong last time. This time it was the entire city of Renton. What is going on? This is simply tearing the space apart and forcibly squeezing the 2 spaces together. Bruce Banner couldn't help but roared. He felt very shocked. They just went to the moon, how come the Earth was robbed this time? I always thought this was impossible, but it really did it? Tony Stark looked at the light screen with deep eyes, and his surprise was no less than Bruce Banner. He was silent and continued. Since we witnessed the ruins of the prehistoric continent on the moon, has the anomaly on the Earth begun to intensify? Zhao Heo, who had been watching the screen at the side, said at this time. No matter how it was done, the most urgent thing is to find a solution to the problem. Zhao Heo's words brought Bruce Banner and Tony Stark back to their senses in shock. Tony Stark nodded. You are right. The current situation is like the wall between the universe and the universe has been broken. The only thing we can do is to restore this wall again, so that we can protect the Earth where we are. Tony Stark's words were transmitted to the Earth through the communicator. At this time, Chen Haitian was leading many top scientific researchers to wait in the conference room. Tony Stark's words came over, causing a stir among the scientists. Tony Stark's words were too unrealistic. Existing research cannot prove whether the wall mentioned by Tony Stark exists. Since something that has not been proven to exist has not been restored, how can it be restored? Chen Haitian looked at the scientist's restlessness and immediately intervened. Everyone, please be patient. We should try our best to save the situation. We know the situation of the Earth better than the 4 astronauts. As long as there is a possibility, we cannot give up. The most urgent task is to find a practical solution. We must not sit and wait for death. Everyone has seen the situation in Renton. As soon as Chen Haitian mentioned Renton, the scientists immediately thought of the devastated scene in their minds. They did not want their city to become like that. For a moment, the reality was laid out nakedly in front of them. The scientists calmed down. Even if they did not know the principle, Tony Stark's method was a practical way. They had no time to delay. The sound of paper flying and keyboard tapping came over, and the scientists worked together to discuss. We are measuring the data of space distortion now. We need to connect with Eagle Country and get their on-site data. I have contact with their technical department over there. I will go and ask for it. For a moment, the scientists were united, and the power of all countries was reasonably dispatched and concentrated under the guidance of China. People with different faces, and from different regions all, provided help in various ways. Human society has never been so united as it is now. All barriers and differences no longer exist. When the Earth is facing destruction, all countries work together to fight to save the common home of mankind. At this time, the US shield was also in a state of anxiety. Pierce's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. When the Eagle Country Stonehenge asked him for help, he did not remind the Eagle Country of everything he knew. Now that the aliens are so powerful, and China has the secret weapon of the ancient gods, they must find a new way out, as soon as possible to fight against it. As a member of Hydra, Pierce knows the most secrets in the world. However, even if he knows more secrets, what's the use to him? Just knowing that danger is coming, but not knowing how to solve it, is no different from taking chronic poison. Pierce felt like he was in a dead end at this time, with no way out or way out. What's going on? Pierce shouted anxiously. Since it has reached a desperate situation, we must be prepared no matter what, and a Hydra plan must be implemented. As long as we can successfully resist this invasion, the cleansing plan must begin. Otherwise, Pierce naturally has his own plans in mind. In today's chaotic situation, he must have a place in the world, and the best way is to complete the Hydra plan, so that he can save himself. As for Nick Fury and Steve Rogers, who were sent to the Eagle Country Stonehenge, Pierce didn't care at all. What does their life and death have to do with him? And even if they are not rescued, they will not blame themselves. Nowadays, most of the superheroes in the United States have defected to China. This situation is both a bad thing and a good thing for him. At least it will be more convenient for him to act in the country. All he can do next is to wait for the results silently. If all mankind is really going to perish this time, he has no other way. This is completely beyond the scope of what he can solve. At this time on the moon, Tony Tank didn't know Pierce's thoughts yet. If he knew, he would be even more grateful that he had defected to China. He and Bruce Banner are determining the direction. Fortunately, they have the experience of Xiangjiang at that time. Chinese researchers are assisting them in analyzing the data of the wormhole in Xiangjiang. Everyone is working together to prepare as much as they can. Now we have the data of the opening of the wormhole in Xiangjiang. In addition, the impact of the opening of the wormhole on time and space at that time should be analyzed in more detail. Since it is assumed that there is a barrier between the universes, try to simulate its data, and try to find the way in which the aliens destroyed it, so as to provide help for repair. We must actively contact the international community, seek help from them, and actively receive the information they send, especially the data from the Eagle Country. The signal is now a little unstable. I don't know how long we can keep in touch. You can continue your research after losing contact. Don't worry about us. After we land on the sea, we will quickly go to Stark Tower, and we will contact you as soon as we land on the ground. Tony Stark spoke clearly, and because he didn't know when the signal would be cut off, he spoke very quickly. Everyone cooperated very efficiently, and everyone was very clear about what they were about to do. At this time, Chen Haitian, who had been listening, also said, "Everyone, according to the calculation just now, we still have at least 2 hours of conservative time. Within these 2 hours, we must be fully prepared and ensure that the general plan has been prepared. Otherwise, when the danger intensifies, let alone advancing the plan, we will have a hard time protecting ourselves." Chapter 134. Go and invite Professor Lin Feng. As for the one in the sky above Eagle Country, although he must have the ability to save us, we don't know what Yang Jian is thinking, so none of us should rely on Yang Jian. This fluke is likely to lead us to destruction. We must do our best to save ourselves. Our own Earth needs our own protection. Let's continue. Chen Haitian's voice was firm and powerful. His words gave all the anxious people a reassurance. When everyone felt that they were more powerful, they felt more confident and bloody. Yes, Yang Jian is indeed powerful, but his own Earth still needs to be protected by himself. If everything depends on Yang Jian, then wouldn't human existence be too humble? Just when everyone rolled up their sleeves and prepared to work hard, Tony Stark's voice came. The cohesion and unity of China always move me deeply. I'm very glad to join the big family of China. At this moment, I also hope that all countries will put down their guard, not focus on their own little abacus, but work together to overcome difficulties under the dispatch of China. Now only China can do this, because they have incomparable cohesion and the pattern of uniting all mankind. When the crisis comes, we must unite together. Tony Stark's words convinced everyone. because he was very influential in the international community, and his experience of belonging to China made his words more convincing. What's more, everyone knew that at this time, except for uniting together, they had no other way to go. Just when everyone was ready to work together, Tony Stark continued. In addition, the most important thing now is to contact Professor Lin Feng. At this critical juncture, we need his help. At this time, Lin Feng was playing Yang Jian above Renton. People's communication had long attracted his attention, and he couldn't help but feel that it was a bit tricky. Although he had expected that people would ask him for help in the end. Tony Stark's words hit Chen Haitian's heart as soon as they came out. He had wanted to contact Professor Lin Feng for a long time. Chen Haitian dialed Lin Feng's phone as soon as possible. Of course, all he heard at this time was the repeated ringing tone. Because Professor Lin Feng had lost contact more than once or twice, Chen Haitian had never regarded Lin Feng as someone who could be summoned and dismissed at will. He quickly accepted the fact that Lin Feng's phone could not be reached and thought of other ways. He immediately contacted Agent Natasha, who was under investigation. Natasha received the news from Director Chen Haitian, and the investigation was immediately interrupted, and everything made way for Chen Haitian's urgent task for Natasha. Just as Natasha hurried out, she ran into someone. A woman in a robe. She had a kind face and was smiling at Natasha. What was surprising was that the woman had a bald head like a nun, and she was wearing a strange magic weapon in the shape of an eyeball around her neck. Natasha did not relax because of the lady's kind smile. On the contrary, she was extremely alert because the lady was obviously waiting for her here. "Who are you?" Natasha asked with full vigilance. Natasha just paused slightly, and her steps immediately moved. She didn't care about the lady's answer, and hurried to the helipad to take a helicopter. Chen Haitian ordered her to rush to Yanjing to find Professor Lin Feng. The situation is very critical now, and everyone is waiting for Professor Lin Feng to arrive. Natasha didn't expect that her first mission would come so soon, and she didn't expect it to be related to Lin Feng. But no matter what, she knew that this mission was very important, and she liked it very much. She must complete it with all her strength. However, just as she hurried forward, a hand stretched out in front of her to stop her. Natasha looked at the lady, but she saw that her face was calm, and she didn't look at herself, but stretched out her hand to draw a golden light in front of Natasha. The lady spoke. "I'm Gu Yi, and I'm also the guardian of this planet. I advise you not to go to Professor Lin Feng now." Natasha was shocked by the golden light that Gu Yi drew casually. She had only seen Yang Jian use such golden light when watching the live broadcast of the moon landing. Although the tiny golden light at this time could not be compared with Yang Jian's vast golden light. But the fact that a human could draw such a golden light casually shocked Natasha. "What is the identity of this person called Gu Yi? And she asked me not to go to Professor Lin Feng." Let's not talk about why she knew it, but why can't I go to Professor Lin Feng? Natasha's doubts were easily seen by Gu Yi, and she explained. "Because that person is not on Earth now. Even if you want to find him, you will never find him. Moreover, since that person did not let you contact him, he did not want you to find him. Why bother?" But Gu Yi's words made Natasha a little flustered. Although she had no evidence to prove that what she said was true, after seeing the magic of the Ancient One, no one could doubt her. Moreover, the Ancient One gave Natasha the feeling that he was trustworthy. Natasha frowned. "But the mission I received was to find Professor Lin Feng, and now the Earth is in such a crisis." Seeing Natasha's worry, the Ancient One smiled slightly. "It doesn't matter. Since I'm here, I naturally have ways to help you. And I also said that I'm the guardian of this planet." The words of the Ancient One calmed Natasha's heart a little. Just as the Ancient One said, Professor Lin Feng is indeed very mysterious, and it seems that finding Professor Lin Feng is not a feasible solution at the moment. Then cooperate with the Ancient One in front of him? The Ancient One still smiled peacefully and continued. "With my ability, I can't say that I can help too much, but I can still help you delay for a while. And stopping the invasion of the Dark Dimension is also my mission." Natasha thought about it, and she turned her eyes and asked, "With your ability, you can just do it directly, and I won't interfere with Professor Lin Feng if I can't find him. But why are you telling me all this?" Guyi nodded, secretly admiring Natasha's intelligence. She smiled slightly and said, because I need to borrow your power. By borrowing my power. Natasha didn't expect Guyi to say that. She asked with wide eyes. Yes, I hope you can help me find someone strange. He is very important to this world. Natasha nodded and silently memorized the name Strange. She said, anyway, I still have to rush to Yanjing University now. If I really can't find him, I will report to my boss. As for the person you asked me to help find, I will tell you after I complete this task. Guyi smiled and pointed to the golden circle she drew in front of Natasha. Please, I hope it can help you get there faster. Chapter 135 Loki, Lin Feng. Natasha didn't understand what he meant. She took a few steps forward carefully and looked at the golden circle. She was surprised to find that the other side of the golden circle was actually the scene of Yanjing University. How could this be possible? This was actually a portal. Such an ability was easily used by a human, so she must be able to help with the huge gap in time and space. Natasha looked at the Ancient One in surprise, her eyes full of admiration and confusion. However, the Ancient One just smiled and said softly, Strange, remember this name. Her voice lowered, and her figure disappeared in front of Natasha. In just a moment, there was no one in front of Natasha, only the golden light circle left by the Ancient One next to her. Time waits for no one. Natasha no longer hesitated, and stepped into the golden light circle firmly. At this time, the teachers and students of King University and Yanjing University were discussing and studying the situation of the Dark Invasion at this time, and the atmosphere of anxiety and tension enveloped the entire King University. When Natasha stepped through the light circle, there were almost no people outside the campus, and no one noticed Natasha's arrival. She drove straight in and soon arrived at the garden, where Professor Lin Feng was. Natasha saw a grey-haired old man from a distance, standing on tiptoe, and looking towards the villa. He called out softly a few times. Professor Lin? Professor Lin? Are you there? His voice was a little hoarse, as if he had been calling like this for a while. Natasha looked at the man in front of her, who was anxious, but a little cautious in front of Professor Lin Feng's door, and recalled that this man was Professor Fang Minimum from the history department. Professor Fang Minimum had always wanted to talk to Professor Lin Feng since the moon landing. He had too many questions and things to say to Professor Lin Feng. At this time, everyone was studying the data of the Dark Invasion. As a professor of the history department, he couldn't help, so he wanted to see if Professor Lin Feng had any ideas. Professor Fang Minimum thought that he was relatively close to Professor Lin Feng among all the professors, but when he came to visit at this time, it was obviously empty. Professor Lin Feng was not at home, but he had just returned before. Professor Lin Feng was really elusive. Professor Fang Minimum lowered his head and sighed. He felt very sorry, and felt that there were more and more mysteries about Professor Lin Feng. Natasha looked at Professor Fang Minimum from a distance, and couldn't help feeling disappointed. Sure enough, that Guyi was right, she really came up empty-handed. In this case, there was no need to delay here. Natasha turned around quietly, not wanting to disturb Professor Fang Minimum. At this moment, Natasha heard the sound of a door being pushed behind her. Ah, Professor Fang. Have you been here for a long time? Sorry, I was studying just now, and didn't hear you knocking on the door. At this time, Professor Fang Minimum and Natasha were stunned at the same time. Natasha turned around quickly with her back to the door, and was even more surprised when she saw Lin Feng's familiar face. Did she hear it right? Question mark? Lin Feng was actually at home. Professor Fang Minimum also looked at Lin Feng in disbelief. He and Lin Feng were face to face. Lin Feng had a calm and gentle smile on his face, but Fang Minimum was stunned with her eyes wide open. Perhaps they were used to Lin Feng's elusiveness and mystery, so at this critical moment of the invasion of the Dark Dimension, Fang Minimum and Natasha subconsciously did not think that Lin Feng was really at home. So the moment Lin Feng appeared, they were shocked. Facing Professor Fang Minimum, who was surprised and didn't know what to say, Lin Feng spoke. The situation is urgent now. I'm helping to deal with it. If you have anything to say, please tell me later. I will go to work first. Professor Fang Minimum nodded immediately after hearing this. Yes, you go first. Unfortunately, I can't help much, so I won't bother you for now." Lin Feng didn't say much and was about to close the door. At this time, he saw Natasha standing not far away. Lin Feng frowned and asked in a deep voice, "What are you doing?" Lin Feng's words made Professor Fang Minimum look back. He was startled by the scene behind him. He saw a beautiful foreign woman pointing a gun at them. What's going on? At this time, Natasha's eyes were sharp, and her hand holding the gun pointed steadily at Lin Feng. "Who are you?" Professor Fang Minimum looked at Natasha at a loss, then turned back to look at Lin Feng. A dangerous atmosphere permeated between the two people, and Fang Minimum couldn't help but shudder, unable to say anything for a while. Lin Feng looked at Natasha coldly in front of him, with a trace of impatience on his face, and he asked back, "Don't you know who I am? There are probably not many people in the world who don't know me now." Natasha looked at the man who was talking in front of her silently, her brows furrowed. She believed in her intuition that the man in front of her was not Professor Lin Feng at all. Although the man in front of her had the same face as Professor Lin Feng, and although he was also smiling slightly, he gave people a completely different feeling from Professor Lin Feng. Even when Lin Feng was calm, he could still make people feel a kind of aura of majesty without anger. So in Natasha's heart, she respected and feared Lin Feng. She respected Lin Feng's calmness, based on his strong strength, and she was afraid of the kingly domineering that Lin Feng occasionally revealed. But the man in front of her, watching her smile become more and more ferocious, this was not Lin Feng at all. Natasha looked at the man in front of her firmly, and clenched her gun. Her heart was pounding as she asked again, "Who are you? Where is Professor Lin Feng now?" The Lin Feng that Natasha pointed her gun at smiled slightly. He really didn't expect that his disguise would be seen through so easily. This person was Loki. Just a few minutes ago, when Loki was desperate, Lin Feng's name appeared in his mind like a life-saving straw. There is also Professor Lin Feng on Earth. He knows everything. There must be more things he knows about Yang Jian that he hasn't said yet. Loki decided to go to Earth to ask Lin Feng for advice. He thought that if the Yang Jian mentioned by Professor Lin Feng was really very powerful, he might as well join China. If he couldn't beat him, he couldn't join. But when Loki used the power of the cosmic cube to leave the spaceship and come to Lin Feng's residence, he actually found that Lin Feng was not at home. Just when Loki searched all the rooms to confirm that Professor Lin Feng was indeed not at home, there was a knock on the door. Originally, he planned to ignore it and wait for the person outside to knock for a while before leaving. However, the old professor outside waited outside the door for too long, so Loki had a new idea during this time. Disguise as Lin Feng, who knew that he had just dealt with the old guy and was about to go back to Lin Feng's villa to continue waiting, but was exposed by a woman who had been standing beside him for some time. This was really a bad start. It seems that this woman has a close relationship with Lin Feng, otherwise how could she recognize that he was not Lin Feng at a glance? Obviously, there is no flaw at all from the appearance. At this time, even Loki felt a little flustered. He was used to doing bad things. He didn't plan to do anything this time, but he was regarded as a bad guy. This was really speechless. What should I do now? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 136, Race Against Time. Loki was not afraid of the aggressive woman in front of him, but he came here to ask Professor Lin Feng for help, not to mention that he might have to go to China in his current situation. So he couldn't fight with that woman at the door of Professor Lin Feng's house. Not only that, he had to think about how he could help Lin Feng. At this time, Natasha's gun was pointed at him coldly. Loki's brain was working fast, thinking about how he could solve the problem at hand. Got it. He took two gems from Thanos. One of them was the cosmic cube, which he was inseparable from, and the other was the mind gem, which was in Lin Feng's house. Now that he had the bargaining chip, Loki smiled slightly. Although he still looked like Lin Feng, he had completely given up his disguise. He shrugged and said, "Where is Professor Lin Feng? How can I know this?" Loki's words made Professor Fang Minimum stunned. He immediately understood and looked at Loki in front of him, who looked exactly like Professor Lin Feng. Who are you? You're not Professor Lin Feng. Natasha said nothing. She clenched her pistol and pointed it at Loki. Natasha was worried that Professor Fang Minimum would be held hostage in a critical moment, so she slowly approached. Don't be nervous. Loki smiled frivolously, but it was particularly shocking on Professor Lin Feng's face. He continued. You can't do anything now, so you might as well listen to me obediently. Loki's words startled Natasha. She immediately found that her arm was like an anesthesia and out of her control. What did you do? A dark green figure walked out from behind her. At this time, Loki had given up pretending to be Professor Lin Feng and showed his true face. A chill surged from Natasha's body. That was the first impression Loki gave her. The man in front of her, although smiling, had a deep look in his eyes. The whole person was like a venomous snake, exuding a cold breath. What's worse is that Natasha found that she couldn't move her whole body at this time. Ha ha ha. Loki looked at Natasha's angry expression, and he felt a little happy to say something back. He laughed for a while and continued. But, I admire your loyalty to Professor Lin Feng. From this point of view, perhaps we are the same. What do you mean by this? Natasha looked at Loki suspiciously. Her eyes fell on Loki's cane, which was flashing a strange orange light. Loki smiled slightly and didn't answer. The next second he pressed the cane straight to Natasha's forehead. Loki's movements were so fast that he controlled her before Natasha could react. Natasha's body stiffened and twitched slightly. Her pupils became dim for a moment and then returned to normal color. The person in front of her was Professor Lin Feng, and Professor Lin Feng had told her what to do. This idea took root in her brain so naturally. Under the effect of the mind gem, the brain immediately took action and added many details, allowing this dry idea to take shape immediately, and Natasha firmly believed it. For Natasha at this moment, the halo that took her to other dimensions before was exactly the hint given by Professor Lin Feng. Her eyes flickered slightly, she retracted her weapon and turned to leave. Professor Fang Minimum on the side still maintained a dull look, with an unusually empty look in his eyes. It was not until Natasha's figure completely disappeared, and even the echo of her footsteps could not be heard, that he suddenly woke up, and his eyes returned to their original color. Professor Fang Minimum's eyes flashed with a moment of confusion, and then he nodded to Loki, who was pretending to be Lin Feng. I won't bother Professor Lin. I hope that, when we meet again next time, this disaster will have passed. Loki smiled and nodded, watching him leave. It was not until he walked away that the smile on his face slowly disappeared, replaced by a bit of confusion. He himself was not quite sure whether this disaster could be solved at the moment, but for him now, there was nothing more to do. But as long as this matter was successfully solved, Professor Lin's prestige would definitely rise to a higher level and become the savior in everyone's mind. This would be his token of loyalty, giving him the opportunity to serve Professor Lin. Time passed quickly, and there were only 30 minutes left before the deadline. The black matter was getting thicker and thicker in the sky above Renton. Professor Vincent stared at its changes without blinking, and his heart was no longer afraid of death, but only concerned about data monitoring. After finally confirming a data, he trembled and took out the phone to dial. At the same time, at the Chinese General Command Center, everyone was like an ant on a hot pot, running around, clamoring, and loudly transmitting various data and instructions. Chen Haitian grabbed the microphone tightly, his voice hoarse, but he shouted with all his strength, "Attention, all departments. Parts made all over the world are flying towards a Stark industrial building in New York." As soon as the voice fell, the noisy command center suddenly became quiet. This was the only good news heard in the 2.5 hours of despair and race against time. People were slightly relieved, but there was no cheering. Everyone knew that the cosmic wall generator only represented the possibility of success, not success itself. No one could completely relax until the parallel universe loophole was completely offset. The fact was indeed not enough to make people relax, and Chen Haitian's voice soon sounded again. But time is running out. Now we only have 28 minutes. It will take at least 40 minutes from the assembly of the Stark Industrial Building to the transportation to the corresponding location. Many people, slightly relieved faces, immediately became haggard and desperate. In 2.5 hours, engineers and carvers all over the world trembled with fear and tried their best to control the error to the lowest limit. Everyone worked hard and united as one, just to fight for such a tiny possibility. But now, even this possibility will become a bubble? Chen Haitian's voice was still ringing in the loudspeaker. We must do everything we can to shorten this time. If anyone has a solution, even if it's just an idea, please put it forward. We must come up with a possibility before the deadline. But after the voice fell, there was only silence. In this desperate silence, a gentle voice suddenly came from the intercom. It was a scientist from the US Aeronautics Administration. Stark Industries' latest project is to use thrusters to relay assembly in the air. Can this project be used in this assembly, assembling while transporting? At least it can save a little time. This possibility ignited hope in everyone's eyes. Chapter 137. Not enough energy. But Tony Stark's voice came immediately. This is impossible. The supporting equipment has not been launched into space yet. Even if we launch it now, it will not be possible within 30 minutes. Silence enveloped everyone again. At this moment, another trembling voice suddenly sounded. Everyone, the latest conclusion, the deviation value measured, is slightly different from the previous prediction. And in this situation, a little error means that there is no way back. Another heavy hammer. All the researchers couldn't help but look blank, and their hearts were dead. One idea after another was proposed and rejected. Even if they had tried their best, they still had to declare failure due to various conditions. Are their efforts destined to be in vain? Exclamation mark. Our previous prediction was 3 hours, but according to the current data, the deadline should be 3 hours and 10 minutes. And this diffusion time is still slowing down. I don't know why this deviation occurs, but the result shows it this way. This voice is Professor Vincent. His words gave all the desperate researchers a glimmer of hope again. Man can conquer nature. Man can conquer nature. Since things have taken a turn, they can't give up anyway. Tony Stark's voice sounded again. Very good. We still have 39 minutes. Mr. Chen, I wrote the assembly technology in the Stark Industrial Building myself, and there will be no problem with speed and accuracy. But we need a powerful enough aircraft to fly from New York to Renton in 20 minutes. Chen Haitian interrupted him and said resolutely, don't worry, leave this matter to us in China. Our newly developed supersonic aircraft can definitely complete the task. Tony Stark was slightly stunned. When did China develop an aircraft that can travel at least 30 times the speed of sound? It must be said that in this global cooperation, China has exposed too many unexpected scientific research capabilities. His astonishment was only for a moment, and then he returned to his seriousness. The playboy said in the most solemn tone at this moment, everyone, let's make the last effort. I hope that when I land, I will not see a wasteland. Tony Stark knew that the situation was not optimistic. Being in space, he had no way to provide much help to the Earth. He could only use the technological means of the Stark building to assist the people in the command center. It is undoubtedly despairing to have the ability, but not be able to use it, and can only watch them struggle. If the people on Earth successfully survive this crisis, everything will be fine. But if they fail, the people on the spacecraft can only wait to die in space. Trapped in an isolated spacecraft, there is no possibility of self-rescue, only loneliness, hunger, and sleepiness. This way of dying is too desperate. Tony Stark hopes that Professor Lin Feng can help. If there is anything that can be called the last hope, it is undoubtedly this professor. But until now, there is still no clue about Professor Lin Feng. The last 39 minutes. When the last grain of sand falls, what will be the end of the world? In the spacecraft, several people were silent, with their hands folded in front of their chests. The only thing they can do at this moment is to pray. People on the ground began to work hard again. Under the leadership of the Huaxia Command Center, all parts have been prepared, and the data contained in the processor has been calculated countless times, reducing the error to the minimum. The cooperation between the various departments has almost reached the point where they are in sync and do not need to talk. But even so, whether there is really a possibility of success still needs to be questioned. Group A components are ready, the transportation process is smooth, and they have arrived at the Stark Industrial Building smoothly. The first part of Group B components is ready, and the transportation process is smooth. It will arrive at the Stark building in 3 minutes. Group C components. Voices from all over the world rang out one after another. Chen Haitian raised his head in the wave of voices and looked at the countdown that was urging him to die. There were only 30 minutes left before the estimated time, and it would take at least 10 minutes to assemble. There was not even time for testing. Once assembled, it must be sent to the corresponding location immediately. Chen Haitian took a deep breath and clenched his fists tightly. Time was too tight. What humans can do now is already the limit. There will never be a more united moment than this, and there will never be a more desperate determination than this. How things will develop next can only depend on God. Chen Haitian forced himself to let go of his hand and asked, "Where is the fighter plane currently?" Immediately, a reply mixed with the sound of electricity came. "It has arrived over New York and is ready to land at any time." When the American engineers heard this, they all took a breath of cold air. It's already here? The Chinese fighter planes have already reached such a speed, and they have not received any information about the fighter planes flying. How is this possible? But this is not the time to worry about this. Chen Haitian didn't care what the Americans thought and calmly commanded, "Prepare to land." After the pilot answered yes, other voices also rang. "The parts are ready. Assembly begins. Part A is assembled. Part B is assembled. Drive system is assembled." In the rapid reports, the harsh sound of mechanical assembly made the communication machine appear noise. Everyone held their breath and did not dare to slack off, working hard for the final situation. This is the crystallization of technology that all mankind has achieved regardless of loss. Under the pressure of destruction, some mechanical equipment that was originally just a concept was also rushed out. Although the cost is astronomical, it has blossomed into a brilliant flower in the field of space science. Boom, boom, the huge sound of armor came. Assembled, ready for transportation. The voice of the Chinese pilot followed. Received, expected to arrive in Renton in 18 minutes. Chen Haitian breathed a sigh of relief, but his eyes were still fixed on the countdown. Finally, we can catch up. As long as the machine works, humans will be safe. Humans will eventually escape from the clutches of death with their own efforts. This idea made Chen Haitian extremely excited. But at this moment, Tony Stark's voice came again. "What energy are you going to use? When we designed this thing, we didn't consider energy loss at all. What energy should we use to start it now?" The expert in charge of energy calculation was stunned and subconsciously said, "For the sake of portability, we are considering batteries to provide energy for your armor. Even if one battery is not enough, hundreds or thousands of batteries in parallel can probably make up for it." "No, not enough at all." Tony Stark gritted his teeth. Chapter 138: The Eve of Destruction. Those energy sources are just like batteries. They can't provide the corresponding energy. At least the energy of a nuclear bomb is needed to support the operation of the machine. Why did you ignore this before? Stark almost drawled this sentence, and the hope of everyone just before life was extinguished by this sentence. The professor who calculated the data was unwilling to accept it, and tried his best to argue. "We have calculated it many times, and the battery collected by this energy is enough. This energy is enough to match the consumption of opening a wormhole over Xiangjiang City. How can it be insufficient? If this is not enough, there can't be more powerful energy on the surface. Everyone can only wait to die." The professor was a little angry when he said the last sentence. Tony Stark also laughed in anger. Xiangjiang? The wormhole in Xiangjiang is, after all, a channel opened in the same universe. What we are facing now is the collision of another parallel universe. Are these two the same thing? This reference is completely wrong. The professor's face turned pale when he heard this. This is indeed a point he didn't consider. Not only him, but all the relevant personnel were so busy that they overlooked this crucial point. And this point may make all their efforts fall short. Tony Stark calmed down after venting his anger and said calmly, "Prepare nuclear bombs immediately. Let Eagle Country open its nuclear arsenal and prepare at least 300 nuclear bombs." After a pause, he said, "The Eagle Country should still have 300 nuclear bombs in reserve." After a moment of silence, the trembling voice of the Eagle Country military commander came from the pager. "Originally, there were, but In the battle just now, 3/4 of the nuclear bomb stockpile has been consumed, and the radiation from the nuclear bomb explosion is still around the arsenal. Now there is no way to get close to it. After he finished his trembling words, there was silence again. Everyone was waiting for Tony Stark to speak again, but he remained silent. The anxious silence lasted for 6 seconds. The time that was originally short enough to pass by with a sigh now made people feel anxious and spent like years. If only the days were long, they would be fine. What they needed most right now was time, and not a single second could be wasted. The silence ended with a long sigh from Tony Stark. Start the spark preservation plan. At least leave some traces. Let this boundless universe know that we have been here. After saying that, Tony Stark cut off the communication. His performance filled everyone with despair. Chen Haitian's lips trembled slightly, and his fists opened and closed, trying to grab something, but unable to grab anything. He understood too well what Tony Stark meant by these words. Is all the efforts of mankind ultimately just a mantis trying to shake a tree? He looked up at the countdown, and there were only 10 minutes left. He closed his eyes painfully and wanted to hold his fist tightly, but in the end he opened his fist and pressed a black button. This button was prepared for all mankind, and there was only a voice message in it. Until all efforts failed, until there was only despair in front of him, the only thing he could do was to press this button. China. People still go to work, go to school, go shopping, and chat as usual. Young people gather together and chatter about the live broadcast of the London incident. On the big screen in the mall, the playback clips of the live broadcast are constantly playing. The boys talk about the powerful skills of the great god Yang Jian, and the girls talk about her dress and majestic aura. Everyone's eyes are full of pride and expectation. But at this moment, everyone's mobile phone rang with a notification sound or vibrated. Ding. Beep beep. A new message was sent to their mobile phones. People clicked it in confusion, but then froze. You are kidding. Some people raised their heads in panic and looked at their friends across from them, only to find that their friends across from them were also stunned and panicked. Today is not April Fool's Day. Why did you send me this kind of thing? Some people shouted angrily and horrified, but when they looked up and looked around, they found that other people's faces were also filled with disbelief and horror. I want to call the authorities. I don't believe this is true. Some people hurriedly called, hoping that the authorities would give an explanation. Now, when everyone was panicking and at a loss, radio stations, TV stations, shopping malls, and even the advertising screens on the subway all lost power. After a moment, they lit up again. All the pictures were the same. He held the press release, and his face, which had always been smiling kindly, was now solemn and full of grief that he could not hide, no matter how hard he tried. Hello, compatriots. Now I have to interrupt with an urgent message. The vicious incident that occurred in the sky above Renton is beyond human control. The wormhole is constantly expanding and is expected to cause a devastating disaster to the world in 10 minutes. Scientists from various countries have devoted all their efforts to face this disaster. All mankind is united to resist this disaster. But unfortunately, this resistance still ended in failure. This sad news has the right to be known by every citizen of the earth. Therefore, I inform you with a heavy heart that human civilization has come to an end. In this final time, everyone go to see their relatives and friends, and don't let this death bring regrets. The broadcast ends here. Next, our station will broadcast the live broadcast of Renton. This is the last and grandest gathering of efforts for all mankind. Maybe there will be a miracle, or maybe it will still be destroyed. But in any case, we are honored to have such a splendid civilization. There were tears in Kang's eyes, and his voice trembled slightly at the end, and his hands holding the press release kept shaking. Just before his tears were about to fall, the screen flashed, and the scene above Renton appeared. When Kang Zen appeared, those who had been hoping for a lucky break and thought it was a collective prank were all in despair. They didn't understand why. In just a moment, they went from calm to the eve of destruction. But no matter how much they didn't understand, or how much they refused to believe it, it was all true. Humanity was about to perish. Looking at the dark sky on the big screen and the ruins still emitting smoke, many people took a while to realize that this was Renton now. It had been destroyed so thoroughly without anyone noticing. And the city they were in was about to follow in Renton's footsteps. They, like the residents of Renton, would die for the place they were in, and for the entire earth. Chapter 139, A Drop in the Bucket, Barely Surviving. Everyone was shrouded in despair, but they still refused to give up the last glimmer of hope. Staring closely at the ruins of London on the screen, a small dot appeared in the dark sky. It was the latest supersonic aircraft developed by China. It landed on the broken walls outside the Greenwich Observatory, pushed a huge square mechanical body out of the cabin, and firmly fixed it on the ground. Inside the observatory, the others had already been dismissed, and only Professor Vincent remained here, monitoring the sky data in real time. Hearing the sound, he turned his head and looked at the pilot who came out of the plane. The two shook hands silently. After completing the handover without words, Professor Vincent said, "Thank you very much for your efforts. It's very dangerous here now. You should retreat quickly." The pilot did not agree to this, but asked Professor Vincent in return, "Do we still have hope?" Professor Vincent was starting the machine. Hearing this, his movements paused slightly, and his fingers trembled slightly. He forced a smile. "Yes, there will be hope. After hundreds of millions of years of evolution and countless natural and man-made disasters, humans will not fall at this step." His voice was a little intermittent and a little unstable. The pilot and he both understood that this was just a self-consolation. Since countless species have disappeared in the long river of time, how can their humans always be spared? However, no matter what you think in your heart, you shouldn't say discouraging words. So the pilot smiled. "Yes, humans will not fall at this step." While they were talking, when Vincent started the machine, 25 rockets were launched from various air bases around the world. Some of these rockets were loaded with human-selected gene banks, and some recorded the history and civilization of various countries. Loading these lightest and heaviest things, the rockets flew towards the depths of the universe. Where they would fly to, and where they would end up, even the scientists who launched these rockets didn't know. But as long as they flew into space, there would always be a possibility that a glimmer of human civilization would be seen. Half a minute later, Professor Vincent stood up and reported to the pager. "The equipment has been installed, and the power system is about to start." He waited for a while and said, "I hope we can create a miracle." In the command center, Chen Haitian said solemnly, "Thank you Professor Vincent for your contribution to this cause. There will definitely be a miracle. Isn't it because of one miracle after another that was thought to be impossible, but was actually created, that mankind has come to this day?" Professor Vincent smiled when he heard the words, lowered his head, and activated the power button on the equipment. Click, click, click. The square machine turned gently, and a blue light flickered slightly in the center, and then suddenly turned into a pillar of light that shot up into the sky the next moment. The pillar of light broke through the black clouds, illuminated a small piece of sky, and rushed towards the vortex in the center of the black hole like a broken bamboo. Interference started. Countercurrent equipment started. Professor Vincent looked at the numbers on the monitoring console, and reported the numbers calmly. Deviation value 0.002, 0.003. Deviation value -0.001, -0.003, -1. Professor Vincent's voice was tinged with excitement. Reverse operation has begun. The theory is successful. A miracle is about to happen. Excited tears began to gather in his usually calm blue eyes. The repair of the space barrier is in progress, although the speed is very slow, but it is indeed in progress. Professor Vincent stared at the jump of the numbers without blinking. He knew too well what the change of the numbers meant. As long as the deviation value turned to the secondary value, it meant that the terrifying space tier would be bridged. As long as the deviation value kept decreasing, they could completely block this invasion. Not only Professor Vincent was excited, but all the scientists in the command center were full of excitement. Chen Haisheng also smiled slightly. A miracle really happened. We really created a miracle. Although this is a situation that human theory cannot figure out at all, even the most profound experts in the theory of cosmic space are just blind men touching an elephant based on intuition. But it is such humans who rely on their own wisdom to reverse the situation. Human wisdom and courage can turn the wrist of death in this way. If the experts in the command center have only a partial understanding, then many people who are watching Renton's live broadcast have no idea what is happening in front of them. But they understand one thing. When the deviation value turns negative, it means that the disaster may be eliminated. People all over the world cheered for this change, especially those scholars and craftsmen who participated in it personally. Seeing the cube machinery condensed by their theories and efforts emitting a long blue light in the ruins, as if it was the benevolent light of healing the earth sent down by the gods in mythology, they couldn't help but shed tears, proud of themselves and the entire human race. At this moment, each of them is a hero of the one building that is about to collapse. I know it. I know it. We will succeed. Humanity will not disappear like this, and mankind will surely live forever. I did it. We all did it. The humans on the ground cheered to their heart's content, but Tony Stark in the space capsule still had a solemn expression. He still didn't turn on the communication equipment with the ground. Although he could hear the cheers from the ground, he was not infected at all. Bruce Banner didn't feel strange to see him like this. He didn't understand cosmology, parallel universes, or cosmic barriers, but he saw Renton's live broadcast, saw that the machine was working, and heard the cheers from the command center. He thought things were going well, but Tony Stark's expression didn't seem to be the case. He couldn't help asking, "Are you unhappy, Tony?" Tony Stark smiled bitterly when he heard his question. "Do you also think we have succeeded?" Bruce Banner was stunned by the question. Isn't this considered a success? Isn't it developing according to the scientists' calculations? Tony Stark shook his head. Of course not. He carefully moved his somewhat stiff body, looked at the screen, and the smile on the corner of his mouth became more bitter. That's the cosmic barrier. How can such an energy level be reversed successfully? How does the Chinese say, a drop in the bucket? That's it now. Even if we try our best, it's just a little delay of the destruction. Bruce Banner said immediately, even if it's a delay, it's a little success. During this delay, try to solve the energy problem and get more energy, then the problem can still be solved. Tony Stark glanced at him and felt ridiculous and helpless about his naive idea. It would be great if things were really that easy, but you should know that it's impossible if you use your brain to think about it. Now that such a huge amount of energy has been invested, it has only completed a reversal of a few tenths. If you want to continue the reversal, how do you calculate the energy consumption? Chapter 140 Complete Despair. Bruce Banner's face changed slightly. This was a simple arithmetic problem. Tony Stark had explained it so clearly, so he would understand it. He spoke with difficulty, feeling his throat dry. You mean, no matter how much we delay time and gather energy, it is not enough to completely reverse the situation? Tony Stark nodded, and then sighed. The energy needed next is not 1 + 1, 2 + 2, but 2 × 2, 4 × 4. Even if the entire Earth is drained, it cannot supply this exponentially rising energy consumption. As he said this, he couldn't help but hold his forehead. I thought of this possibility before. At that time, I thought the value of the first reversal was at least -10, but now, it's only -1, and it's still deviating by a few tenths of a point. You should know what this means. He shook his head and murmured, it's impossible. Humans can't come up with such a huge amount of energy. Bruce Banner's face darkened in an instant. Zhao Hao and Zhang Yang also felt distressed when they heard what the two said. Zhao Hao said, then we must notify the ground immediately. No need. Tony Stark shook his head. Some of them should have come to their senses. Even if they don't understand cosmology, as long as they watch the black hole continue to expand, they will understand that things have not changed. Zhao Hao and Zhang Yang were stunned for a moment, but soon understood what Tony Stark meant. Zhao Hao slapped his head dejectedly. Is it destined like this? There is no hope at all? Tony Stark looked at him with pity and shook his head gently. But he suddenly remembered something. If you want to talk about hope, maybe there is still one. This immediately attracted the attention of the other three people, and they focused their eyes on him. He didn't notice these, and continued to mutter to himself. Hope, that's Professor Lin Feng. Bruce Banner's eyes were lit up again by this sentence. He recalled the quantum unpredictable dynamics that troubled him, and Tony Stark at the beginning. They were overwhelmed and miserable, but Professor Lin Feng's words opened their minds. Yes, there is also Professor Lin Feng. It may bring us a turning point. Zhao Hao sighed, but Professor Lin Feng is missing, and we can't find any clues about him until now. Tony Stark shook his head firmly. Not finding Professor Lin Feng means there is hope. He didn't join the command center, and didn't provide any of his own opinions and suggestions, which means we still have room for adjustment and transformation. If he made suggestions and gave plans, but the result is still the same, then we should despair. Bruce Banner thought about it and nodded unconsciously. Zhao Hao and Zhang Yang felt that, even if Lin Feng appeared at this moment and put forward his own opinions, it might not have any earth-shaking impact on the situation. But seeing that both of them said so, and were so sure, they couldn't help but have a faint hope in their hearts. The 4 people in the space capsule gradually rose in hope, but the hope of the people on the ground was gradually fading. As Tony Stark said, everyone has gradually come to their senses. Even those who knew nothing about it, seeing that the black hole not only did not shrink, but continued to expand at a slow speed, gradually understood what was going on. The cheers gradually died down, and in the command center, many older scholars had already begun to explore the quick-acting heart-saving pills. In just 3.5 hours, they had experienced too many ups and downs. Every time they thought that things had taken a turn for the better, the huge black hole ironically told them that no matter how hard they tried, they would just be trying to stop a chariot. Even the most courageous people could not withstand such terrible torture. -1.55, -1.56, -1.57. The reversal value suddenly stopped and fixed at the insignificant number of -1.57. Why did it stop? Is it because the energy is not enough? Jump. Keep jumping. Don't stop. Chen Haitian clenched his fists tightly, staring at the paused number, and shouted in his heart. Don't stop. Why did it stop? Exclamation mark. What went wrong? Professor Vincent, who was standing next to the machine, saw the pause number before anyone else, and understood what happened before anyone else. With insufficient energy, the machine cannot continue to reverse, and can only maintain the status quo. The energy we have now is too insufficient. He spoke with difficulty, but word by word. If the deviation value is less than -100, the hole will continue to expand. But now we have only pushed the deviation value to -1. His words were clearly transmitted to all parts of the world with the live broadcast. Scientists, craftsmen and ordinary people who did not understand what was happening, but knew that things were going to get worse were all silent. From -1 to -100, even elementary school students know the difference. Really, is there no hope at all? Chen Haitian really couldn't accept this fact. He asked whimsically, I will coordinate all parties and prepare energy now. Is there any hope to replenish the energy before the black hole expands? Professor Vincent smiled bitterly like Tony Stark. Of course we can add energy, but even if we find a way to use all the energy in the world, it may not be able to fill this gap. What we need is energy that is consumed to the 100th power now. Besides, even if we can raise such a huge amount of energy, the equipment may not be able to handle it. It may explode directly due to overheating. Every word was like a heavy hammer, announcing to everyone that there is no possibility of return. Chen Haitian slammed his fist on the command platform and gritted his teeth. How could it be? How could it be? Obviously, we have made all efforts and tried our best, but why is the result still so desperate? What else can humans do to deal with such a desperate situation? Suddenly, he thought of Tathagata again. Thinking of the mysterious formation, thinking of the compassionate Buddha who waved his hand lightly and made countless dead people return. If it was Tathagata Buddha who took action, maybe everyone would still have hope. Chen Haitian thought about everything that happened at the beginning, trying to grasp the last straw, trying hard to recall the details about Tathagata, thinking that maybe he could imitate him and get 1 or 2 points of his power to save the current situation. But thinking was futile after all. He clearly remembered the surprise and admiration at the beginning, and the picture appeared clearly in his mind as soon as he thought about it. But once he thought about the specific details, his mind immediately became blurry. The more seriously he thought about it, the more desperate he became. Chen Haitian lay on the table and covered his tired face with his hands. In the command center, low sobs came from someone, one after another, and the sobs gradually turned into wailing. In every corner of the world, countless people also knelt on the ground in despair. Some people were already crying and gasping for breath, while others ran desperately towards home. If this world is really going to be destroyed, if you really want to die, you must die with your family. Chapter 141. The human race should have a chance to survive. Despair is like the black cloud over Renton. More and more people turned their eyes away from the big screens around them, unable to bear to watch the horrific scene. But suddenly, a cry of surprise came from the crowd. Look what that is. Golden light. The same golden light as on the moon. People immediately looked up at the big screen. When they saw the golden light like sunlight, their dead hearts became active again. Is it Erlang's engine? Yang Jian. It must be Yang Jian. The director also noticed the golden light and immediately ordered the drone to approach. But as the camera approached, people found that the golden light was not Yang Jian. The golden light was just golden light, and there was no figure wrapped in it. No one knew where it came from, or where it went. The next moment, there was a faint sound of wind whistling from everyone's mobile phone, and every big screen. The golden light collided with the black cloud, the wind was blowing, and the tiny thunder snakes crackled in the clouds. At first, the golden light was very weak, but after several collisions, it seemed to grow against the wind, and became very vast and grand. In the light, countless mysterious and ancient patterns flew up, connected and spread out, and finally formed an extremely huge circular array, which was almost as big as the black cloud. Even TV special effects could not be so grand and shocking. Everyone stared at this scene, slightly opening their mouths, but could not speak. It was not until the golden pattern formation and the black cloud in the sky collided several times and loud noises came again and again, that some people slowly came back to their senses. What on earth is this? Are those patterns not suitable for our ancient seal characters? Is this something that humans can make? Everyone talked about it and looked at the formation excitedly. Professor Vincent was also very excited, staring at the numbers on the display screen to broadcast the report. After this strange light appeared, the deviation value began to increase again. Now the deviation value is -1.69, -1.70, -1.71. Chen Haitian was amazed when he heard the count. Which great man in the prehistoric world has awakened? He knew very well that it was impossible for an ordinary person to achieve such power. Other Chinese scholars thought so too. Those ancient patterns were closely related to Chinese characters. Maybe it was another Chinese god. But if it was really a Chinese god, how could he appear in Renton as soon as he woke up? Someone must have given him guidance. As soon as this thought flashed through his mind, a name immediately appeared in Chen Haitian's mind. Professor Lin Feng. Even though things had developed to this point, Professor Lin Feng had never shown up. Maybe he was planning for this formation at the moment. Just when he thought of this, his cell phone suddenly rang. Chen Haitian took out his cell phone, which showed an unfamiliar number. He picked up the phone and heard Natasha's voice on the other end. Mr. Chen. Chen Haitian was startled. Natasha was looking for Lin Feng. Now that he called, did that mean Professor Lin Feng? Renton's formation? He was too excited and a little incoherent. Natasha on the other side was very calm. Yes, that was done by Professor Lin Feng. He told me that there would be a way to solve the problem. Everyone in the command center heard this and was immediately excited. It was Professor Lin Feng. I said that Professor Lin Feng would not disappear for no reason. He really did a big thing without making a sound. With Professor Lin Feng here, we are safe. Inside the spaceship, Zhao Heo, Zhang Yang, Tony Stark, and Bruce Banner all saw what happened to Renton and heard what Natasha said. They all breathed a sigh of relief. Tony Stark clenched his fist with one hand and punched the palm of the other hand, saying excitedly, I said that Professor Lin Feng must be extraordinary and the turning point of things will definitely fall on him. Everyone praised Lin Feng unanimously, but Lin Feng, who was really preparing to transform, was a little speechless. This really wasn't his doing. After Loki hypnotized Natasha before, Natasha's cognition was biased, and she directly regarded the golden light created by Ancient One as the method told to her by Professor Lin Feng. In addition, this thing created by Ancient One was originally condensed by referring to the witchcraft spells of the East and the West. Those patterns are inseparable from the ancient Chinese characters, so everyone misunderstood it so gorgeously. In addition, Lin Feng had done too many things that ordinary people thought were impossible before, and everyone subconsciously felt that the only one who could save the situation at this time could be Lin Feng. Lin Feng felt helpless about this wonderful misunderstanding, but this was not the time to care about it. Now, the top priority is to restore the cosmic barrier. Destruction is easy, but restoration is much more difficult. Lin Feng only has 1/10 of Yang Jian's ability. To repair the wall, he must mobilize this 1/10 of ability to 200% of the effect. In addition to being fully familiar with Yang Jian's ability, he must also have the determination to never return until the wall of heaven is repaired. And he has made quite sufficient preparations. Lin Feng has seen everyone's hard work and unyielding struggle. His heart is being infected by the determination of billions of people, and it keeps fluctuating. Every ups and downs make his determination more firm and more tasteless. Until this moment, his strength and Taoism have reached the most perfect state. He is sure of winning with one blow, and he raises his head and looks up at the dark sky. At this moment, the clear and domineering voice rang in the ears of everyone in the world. The human race is declining, but it is indomitable. Destiny is determined by heaven, and destiny is determined by oneself. The human race should have a chance. Today, I will fight against heaven for the human race. The loud and domineering words echoed in everyone's mobile phone for a long time. Everyone was in a state of shock, savoring the words. The human race should have a chance to survive. Fight for the human race with the heavens. Although they were said in Chinese, the domineering meaning in the words made people all over the world roughly understand the meaning. After quickly checking the translation, everyone was even more impressed by the momentum in these words. How arrogant and how compassionate, how lucky they were to have such a guardian. They thought that there was no way out, but they didn't expect that Erlang's engine was willing to help. Such a sudden turn of events made everyone excited, and they couldn't help but get goosebumps. The pupils that had been out of focus were FAQs, and the originally gloomy faces rekindled hope. People couldn't help but hold their phones tightly, looking at the dark sky, and began to pray and bless. Master Erlang, come on. We must win. We will definitely win. The human race must have a chance to survive, and under the protection of Master Erlang, the human race will definitely be able to escape this disaster. Countless people silently said this in their hearts, and countless people gritted their teeth and shouted word by word. And all of this turned into the system's crazy prompts. Shock value +1. Shock value +1. Chapter 142. Erlang shows his divine power and fights for his life. Almost every second, the shock value was rising by millions. And these prompts were the best encouragement for Lin Feng. He stood under the dark sky, his bright red cape fluttering in the wind, and countless lofty sentiments and ambitions rolled over and over in his chest. His right fist opened and closed slightly, and a crackling sound was heard when he clenched it. It was not only strength, but also a kind of momentum, a domineering momentum of going forward without hesitation, and burning mountains and boiling seas. After such a long period of brewing, this momentum, this fist intention, was like an arrow on a string, ready to go. If this punch goes out, even if it is the will of heaven that cannot be violated, it may make a crack for him. What's there to fear in fighting against heaven? Snap. A small cracking sound rang in the sky. Then the cracking sound became a hole, like a firecracker. Spider web-like cracks appeared on the golden formation shrouded in black clouds. At first it was just a small piece, but in the blink of an eye, the broken pattern penetrated the entire golden formation. Professor Vincent opened his eyes wide in disbelief. The reversal of the data has stopped again. No, not only that, it is also going backwards. The collision force of the parallel universe has increased. Now we can only hold on for 30 seconds. It will soon spread. We don't have time. As his voice became more and more terrified and high-pitched, the fine cracking sound on the golden formation became more and more continuous. Suddenly, with a sharp explosion, a corner of the golden formation collapsed. The golden debris fluttered and fell, like a golden drizzle, as if the paper money burned for the entire human race finally burned to ashes and fell naturally. After that, there were several loud noises in succession, and the entire golden pattern formation shattered. Countless golden patterns fell from the sky, turning into a vast meteor shower. The black cloud that had been suppressed for a long time spread rapidly, and the whole world seemed to have entered the night together. The light was swallowed up bit by bit, and the darkness spread endlessly, suppressing Renton's head. Only the blue light emitted from the cube machinery persisted in this darkness. But this ray of blue light was like a small boat in the entire dark ocean, and it could hardly protect itself. How could it have the ability to break through this vast darkness? It stood up so weakly, like a candle in the wind, and stubbornly drilled into the vortex in the center of the darkness. It was a mantis trying to stop a chariot, but it was also the last blow of mankind. The last blow that would never be given up until death. Suddenly, next to the blue light column, another golden light shot up into the sky. Unlike the previous golden light, this light was more dazzling, more brilliant, and more unstoppable. It rushed into the sky in the blink of an eye. In the light, a figure stood tall. The bright red cape, shining armor, and handsome face. It was none other than Yang Jian, the true Lord Erlang. He rushed up into the sky like a meteor, his whole body shrouded in golden light, and the golden light became stronger and stronger, and finally shone like a sun, lying between the broken sky and the devastated earth, dispelling the darkness with his own strength, and illuminating everything. Everyone in the world saw this scene, saw this tall and majestic man, and saw this dazzling and vibrant light. They could no longer speak, nor did they dare to speak, they just covered their hearts, that were beating faster and faster, and held their breath unconsciously. Such a person, such a guardian. It is impossible to praise them with words. At the same time, they also knew that this was the last chance. Human beings would not get lucky again and again. Life and death depended on this one move. Boom. An ancient and long sound rang out. It seemed like a bell, but also like the sound of a door opening. It was as if the time of the universe and the eternity of time merged at this moment. The great master before the ancient era opened the door of time and strode over. As the sound stirred, a small wisp of golden light beside Yang Jian turned into a flowing wind, floating and swelling in the devastated land, passing through the bodies of every survivor. The dying survivors looked up in astonishment, watching the golden wind whistling past, so strong, so vast, so majestic, but so gentle, just a slight float. It awakened the infinite vitality in their bodies, and pulled them back from the hands of death. Boom, boom, the long sound continued to sound, gradually turning into a sound like spring thunder. Beside Yang Jian, who was as bright as the sun, countless Dharma images, like all things awakened by spring thunder, gradually woke up, opened their hands and feet, and surrounded Yang Jian. Just like the stars facing the Big Dipper, just like the clouds supporting the sun, the Dharma image guarded Yang Jian, and worshipped Yang Jian, and gradually turned into colorful lights during the worship, spreading between heaven and earth. Suddenly, all the colorful lights gathered on Yang Jian like a young bird flying into the forest, condensing into a dazzling pure white light spot. This light spot was only the size of a fist, but it illuminated the entire world, and seemed to be without any threat or power. It was a pure peace and harmony. As its light was swallowed and exhaled, a clear and peaceful sound of Taoism sounded between heaven and earth, vast and profound, but also extremely beautiful, as if the whole world was chanting praises for this light spot. The light spot became smaller and smaller, and people finally realized that it was attached to Yang Jian's right fist, and they couldn't help but have an exciting guess. Yang Jian raised his head slightly, and the golden whirlwind flowing on the ground stagnated slightly, but the next moment, it whistled more violently. With each rotation, a mysterious golden rune was condensed. The earth was shaking, the clouds were swirling, and this world seemed to have anticipated what was going to happen next, and was excited and trembling. The pure white light gradually turned into a stream of light, accompanied by tiny lightning snakes, lingering on the right fist. Kill. This word was not uttered by Yang Jian, but was shouted out by all things in the world as he rushed into the sky. The momentum was majestic and the power was awe-inspiring, indicating the will and anger of this world that could not be violated. The pure white light was like an arrow from a string, rushing straight into the sky at a speed that was difficult to distinguish with the naked eye. Compared with the terrifying void, it was too small, like a drop in the ocean. But the power emitted by this little white light at this moment made people feel that it was more vast than the earth and higher than the sky. Boom. The fist light collided with the sky, and there was a dull sound like beating a drum. Then, there was a crackling sound of shattering. It was even sharper and more piercing than the sound of the golden array falling just now, almost to the point of being shrill. But everything in the picture was normal, and nothing was breaking. Professor Vincent's pupils shrank slightly, and he thought of something. The professors and scholars in the command center also gradually understood. People all over the world also had the same guess. Something was broken, but it was not this world that was breaking. It was the other side of the sky, the parallel universe, that wanted to devour them. The human race should not be destroyed. The will of heaven can also be violated. This is to fight with heaven. No, this is to tame the will of heaven. Fate is determined by heaven, and destiny is taken by oneself. This is the power, to embrace all mankind and fight for a glimmer of hope under the will of heaven. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 143, Clouds disperse, moon shines, everything is back to normal. Crackling, crackling. Where the light spot and the black cloud meet, countless Dharma images are colorful, and the 10 color light flashes alternately, and the shrill sound of shattering, between the flashing of the Dharma image and the colorful light, became louder and louder. The collapse of another universe is still continuing, but it is crashing into this universe more desperately. This world can't bear it, and begins to tremble and shake. The cube machine is still emitting blue light beams, but it is also affected by the magnificent and vast Dharma image in colorful light. The light beams become intermittent, as if they can't continue. The earth is shaking, and the sky is decaying, as if it will soon collapse. The big hole in the sky seems to be mocking. How long can you hold on before destroying me? Everyone noticed this, and couldn't help but worry again. But before they could express their worries, the whistling and the golden wind of the whole lantern changed again. The divine patterns that they swirled and condensed were linked together at this moment, turning into 2 huge Bagua formations. One rushed to the sky, and the other embraced the ground, protecting the decaying sky and stabilizing the shaking ground. At the same time, the power of that fist became more and more intense, like a sharp giant sword, and all hostile forces were smashed into pieces wherever it passed. The black cloud seemed to have a spirit, realizing that the end was coming, and quickly retreated to the center, revealing the dark blue sky. However, compared to the domineering fist intention, its escape was too late after all. Come as you want, leave as you want. There is no such cheap thing in the world. Leave your life behind. The domineering voice sounded, and finally condensed into today's thorough roar, spreading all over the world, shocking the people. The figure like the sun shuttled faster and faster in the sky, almost piercing through the sky. The extremely strong divine power, emanating from him as the center, instantly cleansed the rapidly retreating black clouds. Without even a chance to struggle, the black clouds disappeared without a trace in an instant. The tattered night sky instantly returned to its normal state of tranquility and gentleness, and under the cleansing of divine power, it was as warm and peaceful as glass. The divine power was spreading outward on its own, but the white fist shadow broke through the broken cosmic barrier, and continued to move towards another parallel universe. Immediately, a sharp and ferocious cry came from the broken barrier. Impossible. You can't kill me. The voice was extremely frightened and horrified, but it returned to calm in an instant. A flash of white light came from the broken hole. Everyone understood that it was the fist of Erlang Zion Sheng's engine showing his prowess in another parallel universe. As the white light flashed, countless energies surged from the broken barrier. These surging energies turned into sun-like rays, rushing and flowing in the night sky, illuminating countless stars hidden in the night, and in an instant, reflecting thousands of upside-down galaxies. The black clouds that had suppressed people for nearly 4 hours completely dissipated, and the sky repaired itself. -1.79, -1.80, -1.81, -2.85, -4.78. -10.57, -15.49. Professor Vincent stared at the monitor and reported the values tremblingly. As he held it, he couldn't help but sigh. Oh my god. The invasion of the other dimension that made everyone depressed and desperate but helpless was easily resolved in an instant. This person just threw a punch. Just one punch. What kind of power is this? Is this the full strength of the true Lord Erlang? Questions flashed through Professor Vincent's mind. He still remembered the shock he felt when he saw Malekith before, but compared with the power revealed by the true Lord Erlang, it was really a small witch meeting a big witch, and it was not worth mentioning at all. In the command center, Chen Haitian also opened his eyes wide, staring at the video on the screen in amazement. A tear of despair still hung on his face, but the despair in his chest had completely dissipated, replaced by surprise and shock. Is this the power of the ancient gods? It's incredible. It's a collision of parallel universes. Not only Chen Haitian, but all the engineers and scientists in the command center were also equally shocked and confused. They originally thought that they had a very deep understanding of the existence and evolution of this world, but at this moment, their previous cognition was completely shattered. They suddenly found that they didn't understand this world at all, didn't know how it was born, how it operated, how it developed, and didn't know what kind of wonderful existence it had nurtured. They thought they had explored a big step and had condensed brilliant cultural achievements. But now it seems that they are just a child who knows little, but thinks highly of themselves. The whole world was silent, looking at the picture of Erlang Zion Sheng's engine with a fluttering cloak and high spirits. Some people opened their mouths, but didn't know what to say. There were no words to describe what happened in just a few minutes, and there were no words to describe their feelings at the moment. Their minds were blank, and only Erlang Shen's majestic and domineering punch that fought against the sky kept echoing. After a long time, someone spoke. Didn't Yang Jian just wake up, and he was able to do this? The energy that all mankind can't draw firewood from the bottom of the cauldron is not enough, and he just punched it out? Can all the nuclear bombs of mankind tied together be compared to this punch? Of course not. Using human power to compare with the great god Yang Jian is simply tarnishing him. People talked about it in a flurry and gradually confirmed a fact in the discussion. The power that Yang Jian possesses is simply unimaginable and immeasurable to humans. His power is a complete dimensionality reduction blow to humans. Over the sky of Renton, the dark clouds completely dissipated. The stars and the moon were shining brightly in the night sky, and the soft moonlight sprinkled down, illuminating the gold powder that had not yet completely dissipated in the wind, making it ethereal and elegant. Yang Jian still stood in the air, his figure floating, independent of the world. The divine light from his punch had completely dissipated. At this time, his whole body was bathed in moonlight. The color on his body was no longer so bright, and the outline was slightly blurred, but it made him look more mysterious and powerful. In the ruins of Renton, a war reporter climbed out of the trench to protect his camera. When he looked up, he saw this scene. The clear night sky and the peaceful savior. This picture was too beautiful and too reassuring. The reporter unconsciously pressed the shutter to capture this scene in the lens. The shutter clicked, and many photos with slightly different angles appeared in the camera. The reporter selected the most perfect one from them, and couldn't help but be fascinated by it. It's just too perfect. Whether it's the composition, the mood, or the meaning it represents, it's all too perfect. Upload this picture to the internet. It will definitely go viral, and it may even win this year's Pulitzer Prize. Chapter 144 The End of the World. As a journalist, no one does not want to win the Pulitzer Prize. In order to win the prize, the more dangerous the event, such as war, famine, major wildfires, and epidemic centers, the more reporters rush to report like moths to a flame. The Black Cloud Crisis over Renton can be regarded as the most dangerous and most important event of the year. After all, if it is not handled properly, all mankind will die together. This reporter, like all his colleagues, went against the current and rushed to Renton in order to be able to take the most exciting pictures in the crisis response. Before, this reporter had taken several photos of Professor Vincent and other experts, but he always felt that they were not unique enough. Now, after having the honor of taking this photo, he almost dared to guarantee that this year's Pulitzer Prize must be his. Not only because this photo can bring people the ultimate visual sensory enjoyment, but also because of the meaning behind this photo. Human beings have once again escaped from an almost irresistible natural disaster, and it was the savior in front of them, Yang Jian, who did all this. He only used one punch to open up a new life for mankind. From now on, this great god will definitely be the spiritual totem of all mankind. Lin Feng certainly noticed that someone was secretly taking pictures of him, but he didn't take it to heart. At this moment, he was fully satisfied and felt the domineering and refreshing feeling when he threw the punch just now. Although it was only 1/10 of Erlang Shen's power, these powers were still not something that humans in the earth could bear. I thought I didn't have a chance to fight to my heart's content, but I didn't expect to encounter such an opportunity to fight with all my strength and all my domineering aura. Lin Feng himself didn't know how much of the dark dimension was broken by him, but it was always broken into pieces. One of the leaders of the Dark Elves also died under his fist across a universe. This record made Lin Feng quite satisfied. In a short period of time, these Dark Elves should not be able to organize an invasion again. On the contrary, they should be alert to whether other parallel universes will take the opportunity to annex them as they are seriously damaged. And all this has nothing to do with Lin Feng, and nothing to do with the earth. Lin Feng slowly exhaled, retreated from the domineering and heroic emotions, and returned to his usual rational appearance. He took a look at the results of his roleplay. The results were really good. The roleplay points were directly given to 25,000, and the shock value was rising at a rate of 30,000 to 40,000 per second. So far, it has accumulated tens of millions of shock values, and the rising speed has not slowed down, and it is still rising and rising. According to this posture, the shock value will soon exceed 100 million. People all over the world have indeed not recovered from the shock. Because they are too shocked and too focused on Yang Jian himself, most people took a step back before they came to their senses. The crisis has been resolved, which means that the universe is safe, and it also means we survived. The end of the world was interrupted so abruptly, and we should live our lives as we should in the future, right? At this time, they remembered to be excited about their escape from death. The excitement spread faster than the cold virus. For a moment, thunderous cheers rang out in every corner of the world. We survived. We survived. This is all because of the great god Yang Jian's blessing us. Damn it, I will never believe in any gods or Buddhas again. I will only believe in the great god Yang Jian. How can you call the great god by his name? You should respectfully call him Erlang Zion Shengzhenjin. Will the Cultural and Tourism Bureau really not consider changing the temple into the Temple of Erlang Shen? I don't want to worship other gods now. I only want to worship Erlang Shen. The Chinese people were in a turmoil, but the foreigners were no less excited. Before there was Tathagata Buddha, and now there is Yang Jian. How many gods does China have? Who said before that China has no gods? Liar. Is it too late to join the Chinese nationality now? If something like Lenten happens again, which country can have gods to stand up to such a thing except China? No matter Chinese or foreign, everyone was shocked by the powerful force of that punch to resolve the doomsday crisis, and these shocks immediately turned into shock values that flowed to Lin Feng continuously. This rate of increase was too exaggerated. Even though Lin Feng had experienced a rapid increase in shock value before, he was still slightly shocked. If he continued to stay here and let people watch, there might be a greater increase. But Lin Feng did not stay. After watching the increase in shock value and roll value, he turned into a divine light and left Renton. Whether it was the people near Renton or the people who saw his figure through the live broadcast, they did not see clearly how he disappeared, which triggered another wave of shock value increase. In the Stonehenge, Nick Fury looked up at the sky. The magnificent and thrilling whole night was about to pass. A ray of red light appeared in the eastern sky, and colorful clouds flowed between the two standing boulders. The morning breeze was blowing, and a new day was about to come, which was no different from every day that came as scheduled. Everything was safe. In such a calm morning light, the shock and yearning in Nick Fury's heart were like the roar of waves, and it could not be calmed for a long time. Involuntarily, he had that idea again. No wonder Tony chose to go to China. With such a divine blessing, the most brilliant and mysterious civilization, and the most united unity, such a China is indeed more attractive. No wonder. No wonder. He murmured repeatedly, unable to help, but being a little absent-minded. Steve Rogers stood behind him, still not coming back to his senses from the shock and horror. The guy who punched himself to the ground was punched to pieces by someone else. Such a power comparison made him know better than anyone how powerful Yang Jian was. If Yang Jian, who had such a powerful force, wanted to be hostile to the United States, then the United States. Steve Rogers pulled out all the weapons that could be used, and every human with supernatural power and shield, and went through them in his mind. It didn't take much effort for him to come to the conclusion. He couldn't beat him. He was simply an invincible existence. His power had far exceeded the boundaries that humans could bear, and the little power possessed by mutant humans was like a firefly compared to the bright moon in front of him. Steve Rogers could not help but think of the Tathagata Buddha who appeared in Hong Kong. In his compassionate eyes, thousands of dead humans stood up again, as if nothing had happened. Humans now can only delay death by freezing and other means, but they cannot reverse death and revive the king. This alone shows that the Tathagata Buddha is also a powerful god that humans cannot provoke. After all, killing the living and reviving the dead is more difficult to do. Chapter 145, Post-Disaster Carnival. Thinking of this, Steve Rogers suspected that when the Xiangjiang incident happened, the Tathagata Buddha did not use his full strength at all, but just tried his hand. Yang Jian at this time might be the same. Just the degree of loosening the muscles and bones can solve the crisis that all mankind cannot resist even if they unite. If this is not a god, what else can be called a god? Steve Rogers thought of this, and goosebumps appeared all over his body, and he shuddered from the bottom of his heart. China has 2 such gods, and may have more in the future. This means that the world will no longer be the same as before. Even if we don't mention the gods, the will, unity, cohesion, execution, and military and industrial hard power shown by China in this incident are much stronger than those of the United States. It is impossible for the United States to be the only superpower in the world, the overlord and beacon of all mankind as before. In space, the 2 astronauts, Tony Stark and Bruce Banner, also received the news. In fact, they could see the white light flashing on the Earth with their naked eyes without the need for broadcasting. Even without watching it up close, with his understanding of cosmology and energetics, as well as his own sense of power as a superhero, the power of that punch that broke the sky was enough to make Tony Stark tremble all over. A fist can actually produce such power without relying on technology or external energy, relying only on his own strength. A single punch made up for the energy needed to reverse the cosmic barrier. He knew better than anyone how much energy was needed to repair the cosmic barrier, and he also knew better than anyone what it meant for the black clouds to spread across the sky in an instant, and then clear up in an instant. This meant that the power of that punch caused an excessive overflow of energy. The collision of 2 parallel universes was not as good as this man's punch. You are worthy of being the god of China. Coming to China may be the most correct choice I have made in my life. Professor Lin Feng said that there are gods and Buddhas in China. Do all of them have such a powerful force? After returning, I must visit Professor Lin Feng as soon as possible. I must. Countless chaotic thoughts collided in his heart. Tony Stark murmured softly. His face was still serious, but his frown had been loosened. The doomsday crisis was easily resolved. They no longer had to worry about not being able to land, nor did they have to worry about seeing a lifeless scorched earth when they landed. Although Renton suffered a devastating blow, it was only Renton who suffered such a degree of blow. Compared with the most terrible consequence of all mankind dying together, this loss is completely bearable at the moment. This is the best ending for mankind. Not only Tony Stark, but Bruce Banner was also immersed in the shock brought by the punch today. In addition to being shocked, Zhao Hao and Zhang Yang were more proud. Proud that this is their god of China. On the ground, all TV channels, online programs, and radio programs are following up on the Renton incident. All programs have started with the 3 words daybreak as their titles. Kang Ze, who appeared on the big screen not long ago to announce the bad news to everyone, appeared on the big screen again. But this time, he had a smile on his face. As the head of the news program, He has always remained calm even when facing a catastrophe, but at this moment, he could not hide the excitement in his eyes. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Greet the Sunrise on August 16th. I believe everyone has understood what happened last night. The entire Earth has experienced a devastating blow and struggled on the brink of collapse all night. We tried various methods, but all ended in failure. We can only wait for death in despair. Fortunately, we still have a powerful patron saint. Hearing the 3 words patron saint come out of Kang Ze's mouth, many people felt a little weird. As a CCTV anchor, it is a basic rule not to get involved in supernatural things. Words like gods, deities, and guardian god should not appear in the news broadcast. But thinking about Yang Jian's performance last night, everyone thinks that these 3 words are the most appropriate to describe him. In addition to the reports of official media such as TV stations, on the internet, Weibo, WeChat, Douyin, Kuaishou and other self-media social software, the only 2 topics on the hot list are the London incident and Yang Jian's guardian god. #THE end of the world NZASILY #ERLANG Shenzhen. Fight for life with the sky. #HOW powerful is that punch? Destiny is determined by heaven, and luck is determined by oneself. Among the 50 popular entries, Yang Jian swept the top 30. This is not only the case in China, but also in overseas Twitter trends. Everyone in the world typed the same word in different languages. Yang Jian. As expected, it is a being that can live for tens of thousands of years on the moon. It is so powerful. Just watching it on the screen is not exciting enough. I hope I can be there in person next time and watch the grace of the great god Yang Jian up close. In contrast to these entries, various slice videos have swept the internet at home and abroad. Many slice videos have appeared on foreign YouTube and domestic alphabet stations, including Yang Jian's first appearance, Yang Jian's one punch breaking the sky, and Yang Jian's independent back, after everything is calm. There is no need to accompany it with exciting or mysterious music, nor do you need to use any filters. Just posting it so simply is enough to make all the viewers who watch it fall in love with it. The one punch breaking the sky video with the highest click rate on the alphabet station was pushed to the homepage recommendation by netizens who watched it spontaneously just a few minutes after it was posted. In just 30 minutes, it exceeded 50 million views, and the number of views is still rising. Many people who came to admire the grace found that there were too many viewers watching at the same time, and the video was stuck like a PPT. I can guarantee that it will have over 100 million views today. Absolutely, just based on this card. This must be the fastest video to reach 100 million in the history of Zamu Station. Weibo was briefly paralyzed because people were frantically refreshing and posting comments. The audience's enthusiasm did not dissipate. They talked about this matter on various platforms and communities, triggering a carnival of public opinion. Yang Jian, a very unfamiliar name and existence a few days ago, has become the most profound word in the hearts of people all over the world today. Although everyone does not know what kind of history he has, what kind of position he had in the prehistoric times, there is one thing that everyone is extremely sure of. He is powerful, he is domineering, and he dares to fight against the sky. He successfully saved the entire human race from the disaster. The whole world fell into a sea of carnival, and only one place was still silent. Chapter 146. What's the problem? The only quiet place was Renton. As the main battlefield, it was devastated. Those old or new buildings were transformed into broken wells and ruins in the strong shockwave. Most of Renton was completely scorched earth, and the remaining half was also crumbling. Countless gunpowder filled the destroyed streets, and rubble and broken tendons almost filled the entire Thames. Half of it was scorched earth and half of it was ruins. Under the shining of the rising sun, the decaying city was even more desolate. The people who survived in the ruins were trying to climb out, but suddenly heard continuous roars. They were startled, and hid themselves deeper. Those roars came from the mouths of monsters with black scales. These monsters were transformed by Malokis using the power of the royalty gem. Most of the monsters were killed in the aftermath of Yang Jian's punch, but a small number of monsters still escaped on the street. In addition, there were some dark elves from Wat Alheim. When the divine light was flowing, they dared not show up. fearing that they would be burned by the divine light. At this moment, Yang Jian had left, and they naturally felt that the powerful oppressive force had disappeared, so they reappeared and burned, killed, and looted throughout the city. A few hours ago, these dark elves and alienated monsters were also a major concern for humans. After the test of the Doomsday Crisis, people's fear of them has greatly decreased. They have survived such a terrible crisis, so how can these small monsters pose a threat? Although they thought so, they were still afraid when they heard their voices. They were afraid that they would become the victims of their madness before they were destroyed. Most of the residents of Renton carefully hid themselves, not daring to show their faces, and quietly waited for the moment of counterattack. Next to the square machine, Professor Vincent turned off the machine, raised his head, and looked at the aqua blue sky and the depressed city of Renton, feeling both excited and sad. He was excited that he was still alive, and excited that the world had finally escaped death. But he was also sad that his hometown, London, had become the biggest victim of this disaster. But that sadness only lasted for a moment, and he suppressed it with his courage. In any case, as long as humans are still around, it won't take long to restore the glory and prosperity of the past. A small part of the army came and groped to kill the dark elves and alienated humans in the ruins, where it was impossible to tell where the streets and towns were. Hearing the gunshots, countless hidden humans came out of their hiding places and walked towards the only relatively intact building in the devastated city of London. That was the Greenwich Observatory. Professor Vincent was stunned when he saw this scene, not understanding what they were going to do. Have they been contaminated by the dark cloud and become new mutants? This thought flashed through Professor Vincent's mind, but the next moment he saw a little girl staying by the broken gate of the Greenwich Observatory, taking out a broken candle from her arms and sticking it on the ground, kneeling on her knees, clasping her hands together, and praying devoutly. The little girl's face and body were all grey, her beautiful blonde hair was messed up while dodging, and there were several scars on her hands, caused by broken tiles. Tears kept flowing from her beautiful blue eyes, reflecting the golden candlelight, like an angel fallen to the earth. Behind her, countless people knelt down one after another, crying or laughing, kneeling down, or worshipping. They all shouted only one name: Yang Jian, Yang Jian. I thought I would definitely die and disappear from this world forever with the end of the world, but I didn't expect that after a sudden turn of events, a hero like Yang Jian would appear to save the world. His strength, his bravery, and his domineering attitude were a perfect shot of adrenaline for people whose hearts were on the verge of collapse. He not only saved their lives, but also saved their spirits. And they had no way to show their gratitude, so they could only express their small respect and admiration for him in this way. Regardless of age, gender, or both, they all pronounced the word Yang Jian in their own non-standard tones. The off-tune call sounded a bit funny when heard individually, but when they gathered into a low-pitched ocean, there was a long and profound shock. That was the most sincere call from the survivors to the savior. The drone did not turn off the filming. The candlelight on the scorched earth and the words Yang Jian shouted out by people with gratitude were immediately transmitted to all parts of the world. All the people who saw this scene woke up a little from the carnival and looked at the London residents in silence and pity. Soon, people from all over the world also spontaneously held candlelight prayers and filmed videos to convey their wishes to the residents of London. As long as people are still alive, the lost things will definitely come back. Don't give up hope. Thousands and thousands of people in this world will bless you and help you. Erlang Shen will bless you. Lin Feng didn't pay attention to what the residents of Renton did at all, and didn't care about the public opinion on the internet. After removing Yang Jian's skin, he immediately returned to his residence. Loki was waiting in Lin Feng's residence. He didn't pay attention to those ordinary people, but only paid attention to what happened in Renton. He saw the power of Yang Jian's punch that broke the sky, and was shocked in his heart. He once again confirmed Lin Feng's omniscience, and strengthened his determination. Seeing that everything had been resolved, but Lin Feng still didn't come back, Loki couldn't help but feel a little anxious, and looked out the door frequently. Suddenly, he felt his body stiffen, and intuitively felt that an extremely oppressive existence appeared behind him inexplicably, which made him feel a chill from the bottom of his heart, and he shivered unconsciously. He hurriedly turned his head and met Lin Feng's smiling and deep eyes. His heart skipped a beat. He took a step back and managed to calm down with a wry smile. "Professor Lin Feng, when did you come back?" Lin Feng still looked at him with a smile. That look made Loki feel that he was seen through from the inside out. He opened his mouth, but couldn't speak because of fear. Lin Feng walked straight to the sofa. Loki realized that he was blocking the way and quickly made way. He saw Lin Feng standing by the coffee table, pouring a cup of tea in his hand, looking calm and relaxed. He didn't answer his question, but he didn't ask how he came to his house. Loki couldn't help feeling a little scared, but then he thought that he came to Professor Lin Feng and didn't need to be afraid of Professor Lin Feng's unfathomable depth. On the contrary, the more unfathomable Professor Lin was, the more it proved that he had extensive knowledge and endless trump cards, and the more benefits it would be for him to join him. Thinking of this, he felt relieved and bowed slightly to Lin Feng. "Long time no see, Professor." Lin Feng nodded calmly, sat on the sofa, stroked the teacup, and looked at him playfully. "You have another question for me, right?" Chapter 147 Loki comes to be my assistant. Unexpectedly, he was so straightforward. Loki was slightly stunned, and then he felt a little guilty. Professor Lin Feng had always been open and honest with him, and he trusted him very much until now, and he was willing to answer any of his questions. But he failed Professor Lin's trust and almost caused a disaster by trying to get the skin of a tiger. Thinking of this, Loki shook his head and looked up at Lin Feng. "No, I don't have any questions to ask this time. I just want to be honest with Professor Lin." "Honest?" he stammered, but couldn't say anything. For Loki, who was used to lying, being honest was really a difficult thing, and the words just couldn't come out. Lin Feng seemed to see his entanglement and smiled and said with a little encouragement, "If you don't want to say it, you don't have to say it. If you want to say it, you don't have to be entangled. I don't care whether others lie to me or are honest." Loki was stunned again when he heard this, but then he was encouraged by Lin Feng's words and said it in one go. "Actually, I'm a prince from Asgard. My name is Loki. I'm sorry, I deceived Professor Lin before." Lin Feng smiled lightly, and in his heart he laughed at this guy who was famous for his cunning, but he was not as cunning as the legend said. "It's been so long, and I don't know who is deceiving whom. If you weren't so easy to deceive, I really wouldn't have earned so many points." Thinking in his heart, without showing it on his face, Lin Feng took a sip of tea, looked at Loki leisurely and smiled. "It doesn't matter, I knew this a long time ago." Loki was shocked, and his pupils shrank slightly. "How could he know?" he asked while thinking. "Since you know my identity, why?" Lin Feng smiled again. "In my eyes, all lives are equal and have the right to acquire knowledge. If you are willing to ask for advice, I'm willing to tell you. There is no need for any special reason. Besides, God has his own arrangements. He arranged for you to ask me, which naturally means that some destiny has fallen on you. I'm only responsible for telling you the knowledge you want to obtain. Even if this will lead to some variables, it is something that should be experienced. We cannot stop the spread of knowledge because of fear of future variables." Loki listened blankly, feeling a little surprised, and something seemed wrong. But more of it was the admiration for Lin Feng's realm of thought. When he looked at Lin Feng again, his eyes were full of reverence. In the past, he only knew that Lin Feng had a lot of profound knowledge that others did not know. But today he discovered that Lin Feng's realm of thought and vision were far higher than everyone else, even higher than him, a god from Asgard. He is worthy of being the most famous scholar in China. It seems that only a country like China with a rich heritage and a long tradition can cultivate such an excellent and great person. I simply don't know how to thank you for your trust and teaching me," Loki said with tears of gratitude, his expression becoming more and more pious. "Professor, I have one last request. I hope you can listen." Lin Feng nodded nonchalantly and said casually, "Go ahead." Loki's eyes lit up, and he said quickly, "I want to assist you in your work." Lin Feng raised his eyebrows slightly, which was beyond his expectation. "Assisting in the work? Do you want to be his assistant?" Loki continued to mutter, "I know this may be a little inappropriate, but I really admire you very much. I really want to stay by your side and help you do things, no matter what I do, as long as I can help you a little bit and have a little value, it's enough. And I don't need any reward, I just want to stay by your side and continue to learn from you. He spoke faster and faster, and there was a lot of panic and pleading in his tone at the end. Lin Feng's initial surprise gradually dissipated with Loki's words. Loki is a fence sitter. He will follow whoever is stronger. If the death of Odin and Frigga had not shocked him too much, he would probably continue to be a fence sitter, constantly shuttling in the universe, tirelessly visiting the mountains and making trouble. Now, apart from the gods and Buddhas he played, he is the only one among humans who can be called uniquely powerful. It is normal for Loki to want to follow him. And this guy, although a fence sitter, has real skills. It might be a good choice for him to be his assistant. Lin Feng slowly calculated in his mind and had already agreed about 70%. But in Loki's eyes, Lin Feng remained silent after hearing his words. He couldn't help but think that Lin Feng didn't want him at all. He was very nervous. He quickly summoned something and presented it to Lin Feng with both hands. Professor Lin, if you are willing to accept me as your assistant, I'm willing to dedicate this cosmic cube to you. The cube with a deep blue luster was held up by Loki with both hands and presented to Lin Feng. The space gem inside slowly rotated, emitting infinite mysterious power. Lin Feng raised his eyebrows slightly. Loki was indeed willing to give this thing away. It was just that Loki and Hydra valued it, but it didn't mean that he also valued this thing. He waved his hand casually and smiled. You don't need this. Keeping it in my hands will only cause trouble. To be my assistant, you only need to do a few things. Loki listened attentively. First, what is the history of your country, and what is the current social structure? I'm very interested. You should write it down as soon as possible. Second, learn Chinese. You will live on Earth in the future, and you will always have to communicate with people in the language of Earth. Loki was a smart man. When he heard this, he knew that Lin Feng really wanted to take him in and planned for his future. He was overjoyed. But Lin Feng did not take the cosmic cube, so he felt a little uneasy. He took a few steps forward and insisted on giving the cosmic cube to him. Now that Lin Feng is his immediate superior and has an unclear relationship with the prehistoric gods, the cosmic cube is much safer in his hands than in his own. Moreover, Loki put himself in his shoes and felt that he was absolutely unwilling to do something that would not benefit him. In a short period of time, he might not be able to create much value for Professor Lin, so he could only rely on the cosmic cube to improve Professor Lin Feng's favorability. How could Lin Feng not see his intention? Seeing that he was so stubborn, he accepted it and waved his hand to let Loki hurry up to carry out his orders. Loki naturally carried out the order quickly and promised Lin Feng, I will definitely learn Chinese soon. Record everything about Asgard in Chinese. He thought that Lin Feng wanted to learn about Asgard through him and was excited that he finally had the opportunity to pass on knowledge to Lin Feng. But he didn't know that after Lin Feng sent him away, he never thought about him again. Instead, he played with the cosmic cube and thought about what to do next. Chapter 148 Butterfly Wings Fanning the Wind. In the Marvel Universe, after Thor 2 comes the plot of Avengers 2. But in the plot of Avengers 2, Tony Stark and Bruce Banner use the Mind Stone to research the Age of Ultron. Now that the Mind Stone is in his hands, Ultron will not exist, and Vision will not be born, and the entire plot of Avengers the Second may be skipped. If so, according to the trend, Avengers 2 should be skipped, and Thor 3 should be directly entered. This butterfly effect is a bit too big. Will he face Hela or Surtur next? No matter which variable it is, Lin Feng feels excited. Challenging the unknown is much more interesting than following the rules. Playing with the cosmic cube presented by Loki and looking at the space stone inside the cube, an idea suddenly flashed through his mind. Why not go to Asgard yourself? Ragnarok has not happened yet, but it will happen anyway. Why not push the progress bar yourself? Oh, no, I always feel like I forgot something. Lin Feng frowned slightly, but after thinking about it several times, he still couldn't figure out what he had overlooked. If he couldn't figure it out for the time being, he wouldn't think about it anymore. This time, the harvest was really rich, and there were many follow-up events that needed to be dealt with. If he couldn't figure it out, he would put it aside for the time being and talk about it later. The United States. Pierce clenched his fists, looked at the flashing data on the screen, and exhaled heavily. This young giant is really powerful, much stronger than Steve and his people. We can't let China continue to grow like this. We must implement the plan in advance. As long as the plan succeeds, we will be able to go further. The plot that Lin Feng forgot was Pierce's 9 heads purge plan in Captain America 2nd. Originally, this would not happen so soon, but under the impetus of the butterfly effect, under the shock and pressure brought to the world by the Chinese gods, the launch of the plan was quickly advanced. The aircraft carrier has been built. The assassination list has been successfully entered. Prepare for takeoff. SHIELD has gradually realized the crisis and began to take action secretly. But ordinary American officials and the public have not yet noticed the change in the situation, and like the rest of the world, they are immersed in the carnival of surviving the catastrophe. Some more far-sighted officials realize that Yang Jian's sudden appearance is a great boost to China's reputation and morale, but they still believe that the war between countries can never be reversed by 1 or 2 superheroes or so-called gods. They also don't think that people with Yang Jian's power will participate in the struggle of the country. Isn't it too much for a god to kill chickens? Ordinary people didn't think so much, but were shocked by the strong strength shown by Yang Jian in the sky above Renton. No one realized that this was a turning point in the world situation. The ability of the United States of America to dominate the world in the appeal of 100 people are gradually disappearing. The rednecks and teenagers were particularly impressed by the strength shown by Yang Jian. I didn't expect that Chinese heroes are so powerful. I used to think that Iron Man was the limit of human power, but now it seems that he can't compare with Yang Jian at all. I heard that in the ancient times, there were more than just Yang Jian, many Chinese heroes. You don't know how their strength compares to Yang Jian? The Chinese heritage is too powerful. It was silent before, but now suddenly someone like Yang Jian pops up. I really hope I can be as powerful as Chinese heroes. Although the United States and China are hostile to each other at the national level, but Yang Jian saved all mankind and has become a hero of all mankind at this moment. Therefore, the American people are still very excited when talking about him, thinking that he is also their hero. In such an overwhelming discussion, some people with far-sighted minds have different ideas in mind. Renton City is destroyed like this, and Eagle Country doesn't know how long it will take to recover. When the Zhangjiang incident happened, nothing happened in China. I don't know if I can immigrate to China. I don't know this world anymore. I always feel that there will be more and more strange incidents like this in the future. Can the government protect our safety? It's safer to immigrate to China. That's right. If people in other countries get into trouble, Yang Jian may not necessarily take care of it, but if something happens in China, Yang Jian will definitely take action. Although the ordinary people only have a vague understanding of what is happening now, and those who are powerful only know a little bit. But this little understanding is enough for some smart people to make their own judgments. Safety and food and clothing are the first needs of human beings. In today's situation, no matter which big country, food and clothing are almost something that does not need to be considered. But safety is different. Since Tony Stark announced his superhero identity, more and more strange incidents have occurred in this incident, causing more and more damage and interference to the daily lives of ordinary citizens. In this case, the safety that was originally taken for granted has suddenly become a luxury. Who could have thought that the capital of Eagle Country would be reduced to scorched earth one day? But it happened just like that. There was no sign. A big hole was torn directly from the sky, and the whole city was attacked by dimensionality reduction. This kind of thing can happen in Renton today, and it can happen in New York the next day, even in the White House. It is not surprising. In the past, the United States had the most advanced weapons and equipment and military industry in the world, and it thought it would not be threatened in this regard. But no matter how advanced the weapons and equipment are, they are only effective against talents. How effective can they be against those alienated monsters and dark elves invading from another universe? To deal with those people, we can only rely on some supernatural powers. And when it comes to supernatural powers, we can't bypass the gods of China. During the conversation, Some people also express different opinions. China has gods, and we also have our own superheroes. Tony Stark is still ours. Even if his personal power is not as strong as that of the Chinese gods, he still has an entire Stark industrial building. After this was raised, it was immediately laughed at. Even if Tony Stark was still here, his power couldn't be compared with that of the Chinese gods, not to mention that he's gone. This caused a lot of commotion, and many people were shocked and asked this person about the cause. But this person didn't have much patience, and snorted coldly, "There are 4 astronauts in the Chinese manned spacecraft. In addition to the 2 Chinese astronauts, who do you think the other 2 are? They are Tony Stark and Bruce Banner. Others don't know the relationship between the United States and China, but we don't know it. Why can 2 foreigners be involved in such a major space project?" Chapter 149 Aircraft Carrier Takes Off. What? Those 2 people are Tony Stark and Bruce Banner. Really? I didn't look carefully at the time, and I don't remember what the other 2 looked like. Thinking back carefully, it seems that they do look a bit similar. Just play the video at that time and you will know. As he said that, someone played the video at that time again. This time, they no longer paid attention to the 2 Chinese astronauts who were talking to the ground, but focused on observing the other 2. After careful observation, many people took a breath of cold air. It seems that they are indeed Tony Stark and Bruce Banner. But how is this possible? Tony Stark actually secretly joined China without her knowledge. If he has joined China, then why are we still here? That's right, when we encounter those things in the future, weapons will not be able to help, and we can only rely on superheroes to block them. But our superheroes have all gone to China, so who will protect us next time? Many people became more and more excited as they talked, and almost all of them had made a decision to prepare to immigrate to China tomorrow. But some people also raised questions. It doesn't necessarily look like Tony Stark. Isn't the Stark Industries building still open in New York? How can Tony Stark join China? Doesn't he want his huge fortune? After this was said, everyone was slightly silent. Yes, those who planned to go to China planned to take most of their property with them, and no one planned to go to China to be a pauper. How could Tony Stark leave his property in the United States and go to China alone? This is totally unreasonable for him. Seeing that everyone was silent because of his question, the man felt a little proud and continued. Besides, what else is stronger than the United States in China now, except for those gods? Those gods will not give Stark any special advice, and China itself cannot give Stark more benefits than the United States. What reason does he have to go to China? Everyone thought this made sense. In terms of identity, Tony Stark is a superhero respected by Americans. In terms of status, he already has Stark Industries in the United States, and he is not short of wealth or power. What better conditions can China offer than the United States to let him go? At this moment, someone suddenly spoke up in the silent crowd. Don't forget, China has Professor Lin Feng. This name stirred up 1,000 waves, splashing ripples in everyone's hearts. Yes, Tony Stark doesn't love money or power, and he doesn't need any more status, nor does he have a strong need for security like ordinary people like them. The only thing he needs is updated science and technology. The previous broadcast has made everyone in the world know that Professor Lin Feng is the key to China's moon landing plan. It is the name that Yang Jian, the sleeping god in the moon, mentioned just after he woke up. He must have many secrets that others don't know, and he must have many keys to quickly update technology. Thinking of this, it is not surprising that Tony Stark would defect to China. Let alone him, which leader of a country in the world would not want to get Professor Lin Feng? Didn't they fight for Lin Feng before, leading to a small-scale fight between agents from various countries? Even if China is slightly inferior to the United States in terms of hard power, they have Professor Lin Feng. As long as they have Professor Lin Feng, it will be easy to catch up with the United States. Thinking of this, everyone strengthened their determination. The voice that called out Lin Feng's name continued to say slowly, although gods can protect humans, gods are gods after all, and they are different from humans. We can't always rely on gods. Among humans, only Professor Lin Feng can we rely on. Only he can communicate between humans and gods, and allow humans to continue to reproduce safely. In the Renton incident, before Yang Jian came forward, wasn't it Professor Lin Feng who found a way to delay time and slow down the occurrence of the disaster? That's right. Someone immediately began to agree with Lin Feng. China is much stronger than all the military and industrial strength of the United States, and the future is much brighter. I think this matter cannot be delayed. Once the decision is made, we must immediately prepare for immigration. The longer we delay, the more the government will block immigration. It is better to do it as soon as possible, otherwise we may not be able to come to China. Everyone started to discuss it heatedly, and no one noticed that the person who had just led the topic to Lin Feng had quietly disappeared. Walking on the streets of New York, Loki smiled. People's hearts are so easy to be provoked, and a few simple words have worked. Besides, he did not lie, and what he said to those people just now was all the truth. Only Professor Lin Feng can make mankind rise and progress to the point where it can compete with other parallel universes in a short period of time. He was indeed deliberately raising Lin Feng's reputation and status, but this is also a good thing for all mankind. Since he had become Professor Lin Feng's assistant, he had to spare no effort to help him gain higher social prestige and appeal, and tame other people into dogs who dared not disobey Professor Lin Feng, so that they would not have any bad thoughts, and would follow Professor Lin Feng's guidance to make the earth rise as soon as possible. Only when the earth rises and mankind rises, can he borrow more light, and Professor Lin Feng will trust him more. Suddenly, something flashed in the sky, causing Loki to interrupt his thoughts and look up in surprise. This is. Loki narrowed his eyes slightly and saw the outline of the thing clearly. It was 3 huge aircraft carriers. Loki was not the only one who saw it. People coming and going on the streets of Washington heard the movement and saw the 3 aircraft carriers passing through the air, casting shadows on them and passing quickly. They remembered this thing, which was the aircraft that smashed down on the Statue of Liberty. But why did they appear here at this moment? People stared blankly, not knowing that danger was about to come. Only Loki felt that this matter was quite strange. He suddenly felt alert and immediately hid in the crowd. He disappeared in an instant. But he didn't know that the person standing next to him before he disappeared was Steve Rogers. Steve Rogers was talking to someone, and his attention was attracted by the 3 aircraft carriers in the sky. He didn't notice that the person next to him disappeared in an instant. He just frowned and picked up the walkie-talkie again. Nick Fury, did you see those 3 things in the sky? Has SHIELD not responded to the message yet? Nick Fury's voice was almost crazy. Fuck. Of course I saw it. But I don't know what's going on. Director Pierce should be in the bureau. I don't know why I can't contact him. Captain, be careful. Maybe there are other problems in the middle. Chapter 150, The United States. Steve Rogers' expression was extremely serious, and his brows were furrowed. He had just returned to the United States from London, taking a civil aviation route. No one at SHIELD knew he was back, so naturally no one came to pick him up. He was about to contact SHIELD, but he didn't expect such a change to happen. Nick Fury had just told him that he was calling Pierce's private plane, but he didn't get any response 3 times in a row. Even a 3-year-old child would know that there was something fishy. What's more, he had already seen clearly that there were 3 aircraft carriers in the sky, which was enough to explain the problem. Captain America gritted his teeth, hesitated for a moment, looked around, and saw a speeding gang parked nearby, staring up at the sky blankly. He immediately rushed forward, dodged the motorcycle, and said to the dreadlock guy who was pushed off the car and was still stunned, "Sorry, borrow your car." Then he stepped on the accelerator to the bottom and drove straight towards SHIELD amid the sound of explosions. Of course, Steve Rogers and Nick Fury were the ones who noticed this abnormal situation. After all, the incident happened in Washington, the capital of the United States, and it is not far from the White House. How could it not attract the attention of the government and the military? The military noticed this incident earlier than the public and saw the outlines of the 3 aircraft carriers in the sky even faster than the public. In the Pentagon, Admiral Hayworth received the report, blurted out "fuck," slammed the table, and shouted, "What the hell is going on? Who allowed SHIELD to take off an aircraft carrier at this time? This is Washington. The eyes of the whole world will notice it. The incident in Renton just ended, and now this happened. Is Pierce afraid that the public opinion we are facing is not intense enough? Where is Pierce? Call him over immediately. The subordinate opposite him was embarrassed and tightly grasped the report materials. Admiral, our military can't contact SHIELD now. What's going on? SHIELD's electromagnetic signal seems to be interfered with. No matter what means are used, no one in SHIELD can be contacted. Hayworth's pupils shrank, and she gradually woke up from her rage. She also realized that this matter was unusual and might not be so easy to solve. The most important thing is that the Pentagon has no idea what SHIELD is like now. Before this, they didn't even know that SHIELD had secretly hidden 3 flying aircraft carriers. And SHIELD is a violent agency that maintains order in the United States. Even if the other party did such a thing, they can't just start fighting casually. It's not okay to open fire rashly. But if he wants to endure this, not to mention that public opinion will be boiling, even he himself can't swallow this breath. It's SHIELD who made such a big fuss by killing first and reporting later. Why should they, the Pentagon, endure it? After biting his thumb several times, Admiral Hayworth ordered, call the president's office and inform the president of this matter. Continue to contact SHIELD and dispatch a flight formation. If SHIELD still does not respond within 5 minutes, then open fire. Yes. The subordinate received the order, took a step back, stood up straight, saluted, and turned away. Admiral Hayworth still hoped to contact SHIELD, and it would be best if Pierce came forward in person to explain the ins and outs of this matter. But unfortunately, after 5 minutes, he did not get any news. SHIELD was like dead, without any response. Suddenly, the phone in front of him rang. Hayworth immediately sat up and grabbed the microphone. On the huge electronic screen at the Pentagon Command Center, 3 red dots emitting faint halos kept moving. That was the monitoring of the 3 flying aircraft carriers. The data showed that the 3 carriers were still floating over Washington and gradually disappeared from people's sight due to the continuous increase in altitude. For ordinary people, not being able to see these 3 behemoths is naturally a good thing. They think they probably flew away. But from the Pentagon's point of view, this is a completely different matter. These 3 aircraft carriers must be equipped with many weapons with extremely long ranges. The higher the altitude, the larger the territory covered by the carriers. At this time, the 3 aircraft carriers have risen to an altitude of tens of thousands of meters, enough to lock the entire United States within the range. The 3 red dots on the screen kept flashing, and everyone felt cold in their hearts, as if they were locked by 3 red eyes. When Hayworth received the call and hurried into the command center, he saw this scene. He slammed the table angrily. Fuck. What on earth does SHIELD want to do? While cursing, he shouted to the outside, where is the liaison officer? Jim. He called several times, but there was no response. Hayworth gradually realized that something was wrong, grabbed the pager on the command desk and shouted, F-22 flight formation. F-22 flight formation. Execute the takeoff order. Execute the takeoff order. However, there was only the sound of the electric current from the pager, and nothing else. Hayworth felt like he had fallen into an icy lake, and then realized that the liaison officer had not executed his order at all, neither contacted SHIELD nor the White House, and did not convey the takeoff interception order to the F-22 formation. He was simply fooled. No, what's more terrifying is, he looked around. Except for a few insignificant clerks, the heads of important positions disappeared without a trace. He was sidelined. The same thing happened not only in the Pentagon, but also in Congress and the governor's office. In SHIELD, Pierce stood by the window, looking at Washington, which looked as prosperous as before. It seemed that this was still the prosperous capital named after the founding father after 200 years. This land carried the people who inherited the will of the founding fathers. But in fact, its internal holes are no less than those of Renton at the moment. No one knows better than him that the current upper echelons of the United States are simply a piece of paper that has been thoroughly stained by Hydra. Almost every important position is held by a Hydra member. Even if the person in office is not, his closest secretary and assistant must be their people. That set of freedom and democracy that even the officials themselves don't believe in. Go to hell. And soon, this land will be the world of their Hydra. When the 3 aircraft carriers rise to a certain height, the long-range weapons on the ship will be enough to kill officials and civil leaders throughout the United States. By then, no one will be able to stop them. Pierce was so excited that he put his palm on the glass and trembled slightly. Suddenly, with a rumble, a huge roar came into his ears, shocking him back from his ecstasy. What's going on? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.